Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. This is, of course, always our favorite part of our board meetings. We have some wonderful recognitions to present today. So, Mr. Jimmy Evans, why don't you take it from here?
All right. Welcome, welcome. Good evening, everyone. We are always excited to have our time to shine for some of the amazing things that are going around the district. But first up, we're going to invite up the principal at Alamos Elementary. She's going to tell us about a cool thing that happened on her site, and that is Miss Jennifer Ainsworth.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to speak on behalf of Alamos this evening. So often we hear about the bad things that are happening and the things that we cannot control. But it is my pleasure tonight to talk about an incident that happened during the third week of school in which these wonderful individuals, Jason Ernessy, Nicole Brenniker, Penny Sargent, Shauna Belisario, and Victoria Solorzano, saved a little boy's life. He was a kindergartner. He is a kindergartner. He's 5 years old, and it was during recess time. And because our teachers on duty were actively supervising with their radios and being just vigilant in their supervision of our children, Mr. Ernessy, a kindergarten teacher, recognized that a child was having difficulty breathing at the lunch tables. Went to him, looked at him, and realized that he was choking. He immediately called for backup on the radio, gave his location. It sent our health office team on their way. In the meantime, Jason gave the little boy the Heimlich maneuver. And between him and two other teachers that were on duty, Nicole Brenniger and Shauna Belisario, they also came to aid. They also assisted with the Heimlich, and they were able to recover the item that had gotten stuck in this little boy's throat. He was able to recover, and by the time the health clerk got there and our LVN, he was on his road to recovery and breathing normally, a little shaken up, a little nervous, but doing well. They, of course, took him to the health office, and 911 was called just as precautionary. And that little boy and his family he was there and made it obviously a full recovery. Parents were very appreciative. But it was just a great reminder to our staff that even when students are at recess time, that it's so important to be well prepared, to carry that radio, to have your keys, to know what to do in case of an emergency. And it was thanks to these five that we saved this little boy's life. So I'm honored to receive those certificates on their behalf. And just a little side note, they're not here tonight, even though they were invited not once but twice. Their response to me was, it's part of our job. You've already recognized us as a staff at a staff meeting. We don't need any more spotlight on us. We are simply doing our job. And that's the kind of people that I applaud and enjoy working with. So thank you.
All right. And next up for another couple recognitions, we have the amazing Miss Donna Leone. Come on up, principal at TVHS.
Good evening. All right, hold on, let me get this down where, Jimmy's a little bit taller. No. All right, can you hear me all right? All right, so I am proud to recognize Matthew DeWitt. Come on up here with me, Matthew. As a Congressional Award Gold Medal. Okay, now I feel really short. Thank you. The Congressional Award is Congress's only charity. It was established in 1979, and the Congressional Award was created to honor, encourage, and inspire America's youth, which they don't have to go very far because this young man inspires us every day. Through the Congressional Award, Congress urges young people to challenge themselves, and any interested, motivated student ages 13 and a half to 23 years old may participate in the Congressional Award by setting and achieving individually challenging goals in 4 program areas: voluntary public service, personal development, physical fitness, and expedition and exploration. Matthew has earned the Congressional Award Gold Medal. We had him here last year when we put together the bronze and the silver. So now he's gold. We're done with Matthew after this. He's doing amazing. To earn the gold medal, each participant must complete at least 400 hours of voluntary public service, which means sharing their time and talent for the betterment and community, 200 hours of personal development, which can include developing social and life skills, 200 hours of physical fitness spent in any way that improves their health and quality of life. And additionally, they must spend at least 5 days and 4 nights exploring a new environment or culture. So I want to tell you what Matthew did specifically to earn this award. He completed his service hours through a variety of activities. He engaged in scouting-related projects, including his own Eagle project, and I had the honor of being at his Eagle ceremony at Temecula Middle School, as well as helping with other Troop 148 Scouts Eagle projects, flag retirements, blood drives, trail cleanups, and staffing scouting programs. He also volunteered at Temecula Valley High School through the school's ASB program. He's all over our campus all the time. He spent 2 summers volunteering for the summer reading program at Grace Melman Library and volunteered at various community events. Alongside earning 25 scouting merit badges and completing multiple leadership trainings, Matthew enhanced his personal growth by becoming a fully initiated member of the Catholic Church. He fulfilled his physical fitness requirements through biking and hiking and canoeing to enhance his cardiovascular endurance and strength. And he completed the expedition requirement by attending the National Scout Jamboree in July of 2023. There he learned about the cultures of different states and engaged in challenging experience such as whitewater rafting, the Summer Apex experience, and various STEM fields. Geez, Matthew, you're such, you know. Matthew did not win the award. He earned it. This man exemplifies everything that we hold dear in heart, not only at Temecula Valley, but in TVUSD. I present to you Matthew DeWitt.
Thank you, Ms. Leone, and also thank you to the school board for bringing me here for this recognition. I'd like to thank my parents, including my mom who's in attendance and my dad who unfortunately could not make it, my Congressional Award advisor, Mr. Sizemore, my scout leaders, and Mr. Burlingham for helping me along this journey to the Congressional Award Gold Medal. I look forward to continuing to grow as a leader and to help serve Temecula Valley High School and the community of Temecula at large. Thank you.
Take a quick pause. Picture time. Picture time. All right, changing gears completely here. I have the honor of introducing the CrossFit Games 5th in the world student, Zoe. Come on over. So Zoe is one amazing young lady. So I want to talk about, this was her first time going to the CrossFit Games, and she ranked 5th in the world at these games. Hers is truly a story of dedication, inspiration, and community support. This is a bonding activity that she started with her mom. I was just asking Mom while we were outside, are you guys ever going to compete at the same level? And Mom's like, that's not going to happen, right? Talking about this is just, it's amazing what the community has done. They did a fundraiser, and they raised nearly $15,000 so that Zoe could attend this. And her main focus was originally gymnastics. She was a level 5 gymnast. But over the past 4 years, she's played volleyball, and then she took the last 2 years off for CrossFit. She also dabbles in dance, soccer, and track and field. And it's really all about that physical and mental toughness that CrossFit requires. There's a lot to CrossFit, but I was trying to get her to do something at school, maybe put the teachers through a CrossFit, but I'm thinking maybe you might want to put the executive cabinet through CrossFit. I think that would be really, really good. When it comes to balancing school training and personal time, Zoe's no stranger to the struggle. Balancing is something that she does well, trying to get her schoolwork done early in the week to allow for some personal time and just be a high school student. She's a junior this year. Zoe draws her inspiration from Haley Adams, an elite CrossFit athlete known for her positivity and work ethic. is always just is remarkably positive, and she aims to bring her own journey, whether it's into the gym or her personal life. Her goals are ambitious. We were just talking about college goals outside, and she knows that she wants to go to a four-year college. She dreams of competing in the elite CrossFit Games after she ages out of the 16 to 17 division. I love her advice to others who want to compete at a high level. Realize that it might take time, and you're always going to have something blocking it from going perfectly, whether that be a coach or something personal. Just make sure you're always doing what you want to do and what's best for you. You know, it's from their mouths, right, that we can learn so many things. Her story is one of hard work, self-discovery, and unrelenting pursuit of her goals. As she continues to rise in the world of CrossFit, TVUSD, especially TVHS, will undoubtedly continue to rally behind this exceptional athlete and student athlete because she's an amazing golden bear. So I give you Zoe Fiala.
I just want to say a simple thank you for Miss Leone and the school board for recognizing me and creating an amazing article and publishing that. So thank you very much.
I think I'm done here. No.
All right, so thank you for coming to recognition. We're going to take just a 5-minute break and let people come on in for the open meeting. So we'll give it 5 minutes and then we'll get started. Thank you so much for being here tonight, and congratulations to all of our folks who were recognized this evening. We're proud of you. Good evening. Welcome to the regular open session meeting of the Temecula Valley Unified School District Board of Education on September 24th, 2024 at 5:42 p.m. The board has been in closed session since 4 o'clock. In attendance, we have Mrs. Allison Barclay, Mr. Stephen Schwartz, myself, Mrs. Jennifer Wiersma, Dr. Gary W. Woods, Superintendent, Mrs. Lene Anosibar, Executive Assistant to the Superintendent. At this time, I would like to welcome Clinton and Cooper Carroll from Abbey Ranke Elementary School to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you for being here, and come on up.
Go. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hey guys, I have a special award for you and a little goodie, so meet me right over here in the corner.
Okay. You ready?
All right, as we get started here, I'm going to give it to Dr. Woods for just a moment to welcome everyone.
Thank you for coming. We appreciate having all of you in attendance. As I'm sure you can tell, it's a challenge up here for us with 3 board members. Know that we're doing our best. We're trying to practice civility, and we hope that you also practice civility on your end. Thank you for listening.
All right, well said. We are going to move on with E1A. I call for a motion and a second to approve the recommendation of the Administrative Hearing Panel regarding the following student expulsion matter. Number 192848, the waiver of suspended expulsion. Do I have a motion?
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Schwartz.
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Barclay. Lene, would you please call roll?
Barclay?
Yes.
Schwartz?
Yes.
Wiersma?
Yes, motion is adopted 3-0. Thank you, Lene. Closed session began at 4 p.m. today. The Board of Education took no action during closed session. Next, we're going to move on to our public comments. The governing board welcomes public comments. This is the time for open session public comments. They are allowed up to a maximum of 3 minutes per comment in the order received, to a maximum of 30 minutes per item for comments on agenda items or non-agenda items. For consent agenda item topics, a limit of 3 minutes will be allowed from each speaker. Unless the item has been placed on the published agenda in accordance with the Brown Act, there shall be no action taken. No discussion will be made regarding personnel issues in open session. All public comments are an important part of the board meeting and are given careful consideration by the governing board. Are there any remaining public comments on any agendized items this evening, and which items? Okay, so there's 13 general. Are there any others for later this evening?
3 for consent,
Okay.
2 action, and 4 info.
3 consent, 2 action for info, and 13 for general?
Yeah, 13 for general.
All right.
14.
Okay, so we have 14. I know we have a shorter agenda this evening, which is great, so I would like to propose that we hear people out for 3 minutes.
I mean, just to keep it within our 30 minutes, I would be fine with 2, but whatever you guys want to do.
I know we don't have student recognitions, and we're going to miss them tonight. We only have 5 action items. I would like to advocate for 3.
Do you have an opinion, Steve?
I could go either way, but if you are dead set on 3, I'll go along.
Great. Allison?
That's fine.
All right, let's do 3. Lene, if you'd call the first speaker, thank you.
First speaker is, forgive me if I'm pronouncing this wrong, Kisima Reedy Salam, followed by Sandra Stormer.
Hello. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity. This is my first time. A little bit nervous, but still, I'll try to manage to convey what is the purpose at which we came here. So, currently, we are immigrants from India, and we are facing an issue with legal status. So, we have a problem, that is parents, kids are linked to our status. So once they turn to 21, they will have a problem in the sense they'll not be able to work on their own. They'll not be able to, choose the subjects or the education which they wanted to, because I think you know how much costly here education is. So it's like completely either they have to choose to leave this place completely and go to the motherland, that is in India, which they never got any experience to read, in the sense they were from the childhood, that is from school time, they were here only. So it will be completely new for them, and in fact, for us, it'll be fine, but for them, it'll be like something aliens where they don't know what to do at that place. So I would kindly request the board members, if you can help in any way to counsel the students or to convey this message to help mainly aged out kids. Because from the day one, we are legally paying all the taxes and we are obeying all the taxes and everything, every rules and regulations that which American government is having. And we truly respect and we are enjoying and we are happy here, except with the kids, upcoming education or career, because we are not able to plan anything. We are just like struck to take any decision on what needs to be done. Either they have to take a separate visa or it's a bit complicated. So if you can please understand our concern. With the same issue, we have a group of people who have come here and all of us are struggling with the same issue. If you can kindly look into this and help us with some counseling to the kids or some way to convey this to the next level, it'll be really helpful. I hope you can help us in that way. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sandra Stormer, followed by Jean Femia.
Hello, my name is Sandra Stormer, and I've lived in Temecula 25 years. Not only has my son attended the schools, but my granddaughter is personally attending now. I'm new to the boardroom, however, I'm compelled to speak my voice on what I've witnessed. I am utterly shocked at the bullying aspect of intentional, demeaning, and disparaging statements intended to humiliate, discredit a fellow board member by a group when they go to the microphone, showing kids how to be a bully. This only hurts our children, our families, and our schools and our community. There have been personal attacks being directed at Jen Wiersma with an agenda to disrupt, create chaos, including personal misleading attacks directed only toward her. Allison Barkley, you posted on social media all the reasons why you were right to walk out of a meeting and censor Ms. Wiersma. You did not tell the truth. It's maddening that you can get away with that, not taking any accountability nor stepping back with perspective. You censored and took away a First Amendment right of a board member. Ms. Wiersma was a whistleblower and you didn't like it. You were completely blinded by your agenda and the union narrative you support. This is about you trying to silence a peer member of a board because she doesn't have the same narrative as you. The people voted for Jen Wiersma to the board and knew when she was duly elected what she stood for in her representation of those that voted for her. You and the union narrative didn't like what the people voted for, so tried to remove her from office, in which you created the added burden and financial cost for the district. She prevailed on the recall as demonstrated by the votes received, and yet continued to display unacceptable tactics being used to silence her voice. You cannot silence me. Jen Wiersma has a voice. It's my voice and all the people in Temecula who voted her as a board member. It stopped the agenda to change Temecula schools and take away our constitutional right to protect our children from the woke ideology being pushed. The group that supports you, Allison, in these meetings create chaos with examples of repetitive snapping, clapping, talking loudly when someone's speaking at the podium. They're doing your work and you're allowing it. As a representative of the school board, and the public expects better of you. I heard that you're aspiring to be a president next year. A good leader would never extinguish the voice of a colleague, even when challenged. And I don't believe that you're qualified for such a position. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jean Femia, followed by Vershin.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jean Femia, and I have a short comment. Mrs. Wiersma, at the last meeting, you told the audience, this is not your meeting. The recalled board president, Komrosky, said the same thing several times, but that's not true. Community participation in school board decisions does not end at the ballot box. The Brown Act in California makes boards like this one accountable to the public, guaranteeing open meetings and public comments on board issues. The Brown Act says, quote, the people in delegating authority do not give their public servants the right to decide what is good for the people to know and what is not good for them to know. The people insist on remaining informed so that they may retain control over the instruments that they have created. That's you, trustees. You are the instruments that we voters have created. The law allows and expects us not just to observe meetings, but also to participate. The law allows and expects us to comment, to cheer, to criticize. The law also allows and expects you all to listen and give our points of view your full consideration. This is not just your meeting. It is our meeting, too. The community has a valid interest in making sure our tax money is well spent and our children learn to be productive, thoughtful citizens. We have a valid interest in making sure that you're doing the job that we elected you to do. We don't just observe, we participate in these meetings. Please remember that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean.
Vershin, followed by Robert Tyler. Vershin's up first. Is there a Vershin? Yeah, I'm sorry. You're up first.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rasheen, and I'm here to talk about the immigration status. So my dad submitted the application for the green card in December 2014, hoping to receive it within a a reasonable time frame. However, it is now 2024 and we are still waiting. Without a green card, I do not have a I don't have a social security number. This one missing piece means I cannot legally work, making it nearly impossible for me to support my family financially. The hurdles do not stop there. As a student, many colleges expect me to participate in internships, getting real-world experiences to improve your chances to admission. But without an SSN, I cannot participate in internships or even certain extracurricular activities. This not only affects my career, but also puts me at a disadvantage compared to other students in the college admission process. So I would like to finish off by asking for guidance regarding me not being able to support my family financially. And second, I am considered a out-of-state student when it comes to college admission, so hopefully, meaning that I would have to pay double the tuition even after staying here for more than 10 years. So yeah, that is it. Thank you.
Thank you. Robert Tyler, followed by Steve Campos.
I'm Robert Tyler with Advocates for Faith and Freedom. We are representing the school district in defense in the action brought challenging the policies as it relates to the critical race theory as well as the parental notification policy. I am here now instead of coming at a later time because I've got a birthday party to get to for my granddaughter. So I figured I'd come and just address you during public comment briefly. Simply just to say, first of all, thank you, Superintendent Woods. You and your staff have been incredibly helpful. We are in the process of going through discovery, and Superintendent Woods has been great to work with, and we'll be continuing through that process over the coming months. So far, I just wanted to, I think publicly, it's important for you to understand that the costs that the district have incurred so far are $4,063 total since this litigation began. Since the litigation began, we defended against a preliminary injunction. We prevailed at the Superior Court. The plaintiffs in the case sought to prevent both policies from coming into effect, and we prevailed, and the plaintiffs appealed that decision. We are now in the Court of Appeal. We just filed our brief in the Court of Appeal, and next will be a brief from the opposition, and then there'll be oral argument. But it looks favorable at this point in time based upon the law as we've seen it. And I thought that it would be relevant as well. So far, the pro bono, the value of the pro bono hours that we've put into it are a minimum of $163,820 that we have put into this case to date. And all of that time and information is protected by the attorney-client privilege, and it's been submitted to the superintendent in the district already. But the total, I think, is relevant. I know that was a concern going forward in terms of how much cost this type of litigation would be, and frankly, most of that expense has been borne through our nonprofit organization to the tune of $163,000, and the districts only have come up with about $4,000. So far, it's been favorable, and I'll be happy to come back to a closed session in the future, but now I run to a birthday party, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tyler. Steve Campos, followed by Christine Massa.
Greetings, Cabinet, board members. Thank you, Bob, for your services. We appreciate it. You've saved us a lot of money. And I just want to remind people that the suit that he's discussing or talking about is that which was brought by TVEA as well as public counsel. completely could have been avoided, but obviously this is the path that we find ourselves in. I want to thank the Indian community who came out today. It breaks our heart to hear those stories. My parents were immigrants to this country, and so for me, it's extremely it hurts because I've been given the opportunity for my parents' sacrifice, and then these parents have come out and they're doing everything legally. That's one thing I think that wasn't mentioned, and it's because of the illegal process and stuff that is going on, it backs them up. And that's unfortunate because they don't qualify for some of the things that maybe someone who's illegal and coming through as an illegal immigrant, then they do not have access to that information. And so I will tell you this, that as a board member, I'm just speaking now as from my board member seat, that I will advocate for your families and make sure that when I go to Washington, D.C. to advocate in April, that this will be on my mind, and I'll bring it to the attention of CSBA because it's something that we have to do. If it's happening here in this community, it's happening all over the place. So you have my word on that I'll go ahead and do that. Next, I would like to invite all the TVUSD middle schools to participate in our annual Vail Ranch Cross Country Invitational. Usually we get low turnout from other schools, and that's usually because of the cost of busing, and it's our own event. So we've kind of not invited other schools, but we'd love to see people come out because it's a great race, and it kicks off the cross-country season. And if you're not aware of it, we're probably one of the best middle school programs in the country. We feed into Great Oak, and you all know what Great Oak has done with our cross-country program. So hopefully we can do that. I also want to give a shout out. Last night I happened to be having dinner at BJ's, and I met a couple people that are dear to me and important. And so I want to give a shout out to Linda Zimmel and the Honorable Jeff Zimmel for their contributions to the mock trials that are being held at CHS. It's interesting how you network throughout things. Our boys played soccer together here in the Valley, and it was great to see them and share what was going on. And I didn't realize that Jeff is now a judge. So shout out to them for all that they do for our community. And last things I do want to mention, because a comment was made, these meetings are set up so that the board can handle their business meetings. Now, everything was said true, that there's participation by the community in that. But what is not allowed is disruption. And when there's disruption, they have every right to send people out, to close the meeting off to the public if the public cannot behave like adults. And in too many times, we've seen them act like children. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Campos. Christine Massa, followed by John Cobb.
Hello, board and executive staff. Always great to see your faces. It was great to see Dr. Woods, Mrs. Barkley, Mr. Schwartz, Mr. Arce, I think you were there as well at the Chaparral TVHS game. We won't talk about the score, right, Mrs. Barkley? But it was also our Junior Puma Camp fundraiser for cheer. Dance had a camp as well, and it was really great to see all our little junior athletes out on the field. But first, I would really like to say I'm really happy that we have public comments so that we can legally express our First Amendment rights in any way that we see fit. It's a great country we live in, as you can tell by the number of people who want to come here. And just as others are free to express their comments and lies and false narratives on social media, we get to come here and speak as well. So speaking on public comments, I'm here to propose that the board adopt a policy to limit board comments, similar to public comments, to a total of 3 minutes. That includes not abusing public comment section of the meeting to have 3 people be proxy for your individual public comment, which effectively gave a single speaker 6 to 9 minutes of public comments in violation of the meeting rules. I mean, if you're going to allow that violation for one speaker, you have to allow it for everyone. I'd love to talk for 6 minutes. I have lots to say. But I see that Mrs. Wiersma again abused public comments just a few minutes before me by allowing a commenter to give a report out on district litigation rather than appropriately agendize it in information and reports. So let's squelch all that, and let's keep board comments to their designated section and keep the agenda properly agendized and make the board comments a maximum of 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Massa. John Cobb, followed by Upney.
Good evening. Last week, a 17-year-old student named Emily Gold killed herself near Riverside when she jumped off an overpass and was hit by a car. By all outward appearances, it seemed that she was a happy and successful student. She was a beautiful cheerleader who won a standing ovation after her performance on America's Got Talent. I don't know what challenges Emily Gold was facing, and maybe nobody does. But I do know one thing. If her parents had known the challenges that she was facing, she would probably still be alive. Suicide is the #2 leading cause of death for young people in the United States. The suicide rate among students who identify as LGBT is especially horrific. More than 40% of minors who identify as transgender have considered suicide in the past 12 months. And about 14% of students who identify as LGBT have attempted suicide in the last year. As a veteran, I've lost far too many friends myself. And after every suicide, people say, if only we had known, we could have helped. If only we had known what they were facing. No parent should ever be told that something was withheld from them, that their child died because a school or because people in Sacramento decided that they didn't deserve to know that their student was at high risk. Better communication prevents suicide. Parents and teachers need to work together to identify kids who are at high risk to prevent suicide. We cannot withhold, we cannot be shy about sharing mental health concerns with parents who are in the best position to help their children and naturally understand the most about their background, their medications, and other challenges that they're facing. According to a recent Rasmussen poll, 84% of California voters would support a law that required schools to notify parents of any major change in a child's physical, mental, or emotional health or academic performance, 84%. Yet it's unfortunate that Mr. Schwartz and Mrs. Barclay have stood against these common sense parental notification policies. In a recent video, Mr. Schwartz also assured parents that their rights are protected under Ed Code 51-100, 101, and 102. He left out, however, the parental right to know about certain serious challenges that our kids are facing. That right is not protected under the Ed Code, among others, and that right is specifically taken away by AB 1955. Recently, Mr. Schwartz has personally been working closely with Tony Thurman and David Goldberg, two radical leftists who are strong advocates for schools to keep secrets from parents, specifically about high risk of suicide challenges that they're facing. Let me be clear. Parents are the best advocates for their children. Parents know what's best for their kids. Parents care the most about their kids, and parents are not the enemy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cobb. Upney, followed by Christopher Bell.
I don't remember the policy top of my head, but Ed Code requires a specific suicide prevention policy for every school district, and we have one. It has been in place. And today's topic of comments for me is your post about Edgar Allan Poe for The Pit and the Pendulum, supposedly teaching Satanism. It is very, very concerning. This text has a Lexile level of 1310. That means it wasn't taught to like 6th graders or anything. It's an 8th grade story. My daughter also did the suspense chapter, and they picked up horror was Let Them Play God was their thing. How do I know? I can go on Canvas, I can read everything that is there. And every assignment, every score is visible to the parents. I forgot to bring the letter. At the beginning of the year, I got a green piece of paper which says that there are going to be challenging texts for middle school students. If you have any objections, please reach out to the teacher. It also has a little section about a nonprofit library where it says these books have been donated by a nonprofit. These might not be properly vetted. If you do not want your child reading these books or have access to this library, please let the teacher know. That letter, nowhere does it suggest, like, go reach out to a board member who, with their limited comprehension skills, should go create propaganda videos on social media and unnecessarily agitate people. Exposing students to challenging text develop critical thinking and broadens perspective. And life is unpredictable. You can't foresee what challenges your children might face. Exposing them to diverse perspectives won't harm them. In fact, it might equip them to handle situations you've never experienced. For example, I read Rudyard Kipling's poem, If, in the 7th grade. My daughter got it as an assignment for advanced work in her 3rd grade, but it did helped me during COVID-19 when the world was going crazy around us. That poem really did bring solace, like, when you can keep your mind when all around you are losing theirs. It did make quite a bit of sense at that time. You consistently stir up controversy, sowing seeds of division, seemingly for attention rather than addressing genuine issues. Your role is governance, not management, a concept you fail to grasp. A policy for requesting alternative reading assignments has been placed in 2018. Actually, I think it's before that, since 1996. It was revised in 2018. This topic has been continuously discussed at board meetings. Dr. Velez gave a presentation again. Everybody was taught, what 1312.2, what is the admin regulation, how a parent can request. We've gone over and over again. You seem to be unable to comprehend this, and you continue to insert yourself in these situations, disrespecting the teacher's professional judgments. Your latest propaganda post about a classic story, one that has been read worldwide for over 2 centuries, once again displays your incompetence and ignorance for all to see, much like the curriculum adoption. Thank you.
Thank you, Upmeet. Christopher Belt, followed by Ravi.
Good evening, staff, board, fellow community members. My name is Christopher Bout. I'm a local parent, local community member for 25 years. And firstly, I just want to say that whatever I say up here is constitutionally protected by the First Amendment. No matter how much you hate me, no matter how offensive I may be, it is still protected speech. I want to speak tonight a little bit about the egregious fiscal mismanagement, or I should say the expenditures incurred by Ms. Barclay and Mr. Schwartz. Regarding the very overdue firing of Superintendent McClay, you horribly overstated those costs, $50,000 to $80,000, just trying to make it bigger than it actually is. Ms. Barclay, your senseless Brown Act violation accusation, that cost us $25,000. And also, Barclay and Schwartz, your Antifa friends, their threats cost us an extra $50,000 in security. You also slapped a restraining order on a parent after you didn't like something that he said, okay? That was an extra $25,000 that we did not have to incur. The recall expenses, I don't have specific numbers on that other than it's approaching $200,000, and that may be wrong. It may be in excess of $200,000. But you know what? Side note on the recall, Danny Gonzalez, when he was selling his house, now this speaks to kind of, not fiscally, but your behavior. When he was selling his house, he had an open house. A group of your friends, your well-known friends, your well-known supporters with Satan tattoos and all, okay, posed as shoppers looking for houses, okay? They entered his open house and was conducting some kind of weird seance or something like that. These are not my words. This is on video, okay? So they were calling down these evil spirits to curse his home. Now, I'm thinking, what kind of people do that? I mean, who does that? I mean, these are your friends and your supporters. You did nothing to decry that action. That is reprehensible behavior, and I'm out of time. Thank you very much. I just want the public to know a little bit about your character and the fiscal mismanagement and the expenses that you are responsible for. Thank you.
Thank you. Ravi Maduri, followed by Kieran.
Hi, thanks to everyone here. I'm Ravi Maduri, and I'm from India. I'm working with Qualcomm here on H-1B status. Okay, and my kids are in H-4 status. That both my kids are in grade of high school now, 12th and 9th graders. So the major problem what we are facing is, right, once the kids turn 21, they have to move from H-4 to F-1 to complete their studies. If anything goes wrong just because of the decisions made by the interviewer there, so their studies will be break in between. Apart from that, when the kids grow after 15, they tend to go for some small jobs for themselves to feel like how their friends are doing. Because my daughter has complained me that one of her friends was working in some part-time job over the summer holidays, along with her summer school. So when she threw a small party, she felt like she's earning. I'm not earning anything. The reason for that is she can't go for any, not even a small job, she can't earn. She's not allowed to do legally. So it's creating some kind of mental trauma in them that what my friends can do, I can't do. Tomorrow, once we go to the bachelor's, say undergraduates, they can do some tutoring and kind of things. But she can't do that because legally her visa status stops her. So these kind of things, we are trying to give them some knowledge on how they can handle them, but we are completely not able to do that. And we need some support from the school board to create some sessions for them to understand these better and also take these matters to the next level where some kind of support they can get. Like my wife can get a H4 as an EAD where she can work, but it's their choice whether to work or not. But the kids cannot get an EAD to work something. So on these matters, we really require some support from the school board. This is a major problem for most of our immigrants or non-immigrants. Actually, H-1B is called as a non-immigrant visa. The thing is, right, we are working here with high skills, working for bigger, as doctors as well as some technical engineers. I work for the Qualcomm in the GPU team. So we work a lot. We abide by the rules and regulations of this country, and we pay taxes. Every rule, we are legally staying here. So we need some support from the board, as well as from the community. And also, there are some other instruments. I don't want to raise them, but thing is, right, we need support from the community as well, along with the board. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Karen, followed by Emil Barham.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kiran Chopade, and I work for the healthcare industry supporting all the Americans with my work. So again, here's the issue, like I'm also an immigrant on H-1B visa, and my daughter goes into the Chaparral High School. She's in the sophomore year, and today she did not came because she has a tennis match against the TVUSD, and she's like a #1 seeded in double, so she could not make here. The point here is to make is like, again, after certain years, she'll be out of the status. And it would be a big trauma for her also, and as a family also. So she has to go back to India and then apply for the visa. So we need help from like TVUSD, everyone, and the community, so you can help us, to take this work to your next level, and you can make an arrangement for the students so they can do the internship also, and they can study here and work here also. And secondly, like for them, this is their home because they have left the country when they were like babies or 1 or 2 years. So everything they know about the American culture, so everything, they're here itself. So again, going back, it would be trauma, definitely mentally, physically for her. And then again, there would be a parent, we will be working here maybe, and my kid would be in India, so that would be a disgusting thing for us, like, as a family. So requesting you, all of you, to, help us, guide them, and to make their future bright so that they can be a bright student here, they can work here, and serve America better. So that's the thing which I have to put to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Emil Barham, followed by John Vasquez.
Good evening, everybody. I have 2 scenarios tonight. I'd like you to keep them separate, and then I'm going to conclude. What I'm going to talk about doesn't really pertain to anything board policy-wise. This is more really for you, Dr. Woods. So as most of you know, I'm a math teacher, or I was primarily, but I also have a social science credential. And one year, the principal came to me and said, "You're going to teach government email, one class." And I thought, okay, how am I going to make this interesting to kids besides teaching out of the book? So what I came up with was students are going to journal. They're going to watch MSNBC, they're going to watch a little bit of CNN, and they're going to watch a little bit of Fox News. And they're going to take all of those perspectives and come to class on Friday and talk and debate. So I thought to myself, even though these kids are 17 or 18 years old, maybe some of their parents don't want them watching Rachel Maddow or Sean Hannity. So what I did was I put something out to the parents and said, this is what I'm going to do. If you have any objections, let me know, and we'll figure something out. So that's one scenario. Number two, the pit and the pendulum. And I agree with one of these speakers up here. Students should be exposed to rigorous texts. The video that was put out, I'm not sure what the teacher was thinking, because this is hearsay, but that teacher knew that those images were disturbing. And if she knew that, why didn't she put something out beforehand? So I guess what I want to say is, and I have said this over and over and over again, even back with the Angels in America scenario, why aren't we posting on Canva before these lessons are taught? It is not that difficult to do. Post, especially in English. Why are you laughing? What's so funny about what I'm saying?
It's Canvas, not Canva.
Okay, Canvas. Okay. Some people say Canva and some say Canvas. You know the difference. So what I'm saying is, this is going to foster student engagement, parent engagement, teacher engagement, and it's going to prevent some of the things that have taken place when parents are upset by some of the things that are being taught. Give parents the opportunity to know what's going to be taught before it happens, not during and not after. And we're going to save ourselves a lot of issues and a lot of problems here. Thank you.
Thank you. Last speaker, John Vasquez.
Good evening, board. We're subject to the men who rule over us, but conditionally. Children should obey their parents, but what if a bad parent tells a child to be a prostitute and kill the neighbor? Is the child supposed to obey that parent? No. Child obeys parent as long as parents tell them to do something that is moral and just. You obey the government as long as government tells you to do something that is moral and just. That lines up with the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. And I am here to ask you to not comply with AB 1955. So remember the Pledge of Allegiance that we participated in at the beginning of the meeting. I'm going to read from the Declaration of Independence. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed with their Creator, by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That is to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its power in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Providing age-inappropriate materials in classroom and library, accepting and promoting mental health issues of gender identity, keeping information from parents, etc. We are not a monarchy, but a republic, as we pledge to. It is time for me to stand for my daughter, nieces, fellow citizens in the country, and people I love. When did we abandon reason for madness? Temecula, please stand up for life, liberty, and justice. The times call for it. From what I understand, also, parents should know the things that are going on with the schools. I hear, and I'm going to check this out because I'm not a public speaker. I don't really come here, but I'm bound to come here. I'm called to come here. I hear there's cat boxes now in restrooms. Temecula, maybe in Murrieta. I'm going to check into that. But bottom line is, I think we should not comply with things that aren't moral and just and right, and parents should be informed of what's going on here at the schools. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll be moving on to the consent calendar, and I know there are several people here to speak. All matters listed on the consent calendar are considered routine, and all will be enacted with one vote. There is no discussion of consent calendar items unless members of the governing board or staff request that specific items be removed from the consent calendar for separate action. Before we discuss, we do have 3 people here to present. 3 people. Welcome.
Jean Femia, followed by Christine Massa.
Good evening, trustees, Dr. Woods, everyone. I'm concerned about this contract renewal with attorneys Epstein, Becker, and Green. The contract was signed in early 2023 by the previous board majority, which felt that the 5 or 6 attorney firms already under district contract were insufficient to provide them with legal advice. Boards change attorneys from time to time, so that in itself is not surprising. What is surprising are 2 things: the cost of the main attorney and who the client is. Under this contract, Mr. Brenner, the primary attorney, charges what is described as a discounted rate of $620 per hour. At the time the contract was signed, the other district's attorneys charged about $350 to $400 an hour. So this substantially higher hourly rate was surprising. The second surprising thing is that the contract specifies the client as the school board, not the school district, but the school board. It even says that its representation of the board may be adverse to the board's, quote, affiliate, that is, the school district or any other entity or person. The contract therefore puts the board in an adversarial relationship with the school district. So let's be clear what that means. It means that the board majority, which took office in December 2022, had already decided by January, less than a month later, that the school district was their adversary, essentially their enemy, and they hired an attorney to represent them against the district. I ask you, is that what we want? Do we want school board trustees who won't even try to work together with our district staff, but consider them enemies? We saw the result of that attitude over the last 2 years: contempt for our teachers and their expertise, firing an excellent superintendent without cause, passing policies that either were not needed or were against state law, and provoking lawsuits. For its cost, and especially for its pitting the board against the district, I urge you not to renew this contract. Thank you.
Thank you. Christine Massa, followed by Upney.
Well, like the very eloquent Jean Femia, I am also here to discuss item 22, the Epstein, Becker, and Green contract. And as you know, clearly they were brought on more than a year ago as a special purpose law firm that deals primarily in employment law. At the time, and likely still now, they're the single most expensive law firm that the district has. And to date, the public has seen no accretive value brought by this firm, other than them seeming to be Jen's personal lawyers when she's not getting her way, or needing to quote seemingly irrelevant case law in one of her mindless videos. And although we don't see any billings from this firm in 24-25, we know they are pending, as Mr. Brenner has been present for at least 3 meetings that I've also been at. Given the expenditures for the last 2 years and their bill rate, they are effectively providing the least amount of work for the highest cost, and that's not the best use of my taxpayer money. Given the cost of this firm and they're not providing commensurate value for the exorbitant cost, I urge you to vote down the motion to renew their contract. And if you do choose to move forward with the contract, I would request that you amend the motion to completely renegotiate the contract to reduce the bill rate, as well as have only virtual participation to reduce travel time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Last speaker, Upnate.
Good evening. I do not have a prepared speech. I was too busy fighting misinformation on social media this afternoon. But I would suggest you do not renew the contract. Poor Mr. Brenner comes here, says something, and you totally ignore whatever he says. It's happened during the curriculum. He tells you the law, which I already told you, most of the stuff, if you think it's not right, it's probably not. You don't need a lawyer to tell you that. If it is the law, the lawyer is exactly going to tell you the same thing, that it is the law. So I would say, please do not renew this contract. Spending so much money on just like getting somebody to tell us exactly what we know already and not listen to that person anyways is a complete waste of taxpayer money. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, at this time, we're going to go ahead and vote on the consent items that were not pulled. So that will be number 3 through number 21. And actually for 2, the personnel, that does include B through D, if I'm remembering correctly. So 3 through 21, and then number 2, B through D. Do I have a motion on the floor?
Just a quick question. Can we
Yes.
pull it like that, or do we just need to look at it in total? Do you know, Dr. Woods? The personnel?
Well, I'm assuming what's coming next are the items that are pulled, so she's covering everything in between those items that are.
Right.
Yes, so, correct, 2A and 22, that is correct. Right.
I
So
will move
everything
to
else.
approve those items.
Okay, so moved by Mr. Schwartz.
I'll
I'll go
second.
ahead and second that. Is there any conversation?
No.
Okay, we're good. Lene, if you could call roll.
Barclay? Yes. Schwartz?
Yes.
Wiersma?
Yes, so that motion is adopted 3-0. Now we will go on to speaking about the pulled items. Let's go to item number 1 first, which I personally pulled. I'm going to pull the governing board of minutes from August 27th. They don't accurately reflect exactly what happened at the end of the meeting. I know so many times with tracking the minutes, we've got platforms and AI skills that put that together. So we need to comb back through that, and Dr. Woods, you and I can work on that, and then we will bring it back to the table in October. So that is item number 1.
Are you
So one-
asking to table it until
Right.
the next meeting?
Yes.
Number 1?
1 I'm asking to table so we can work on that, bring it back.
Okay.
Okay. Moving on to item number 2, we can go ahead and take a vote. So all in favor, say aye.
I think we need to move and second it.
Yeah, what's the motion?
The
All right.
motion is to table item 1
I
to the
moved-
next meeting.
Yes. Do I- Second?
I would move that.
You move.
Okay, moved by Mr. Schwartz,
I'll second.
seconded by Mrs. Barclay. All right, let's go through roll call. Lene?
Barclay? Yes. Schwartz?
Yes.
Wiersma?
Yes. Motion adopted 3-0. All right, moving on to number 2. This was the personnel items listing, section A. I will say we had a great conversation earlier. It was pretty extensive. A lot of questions were asked. I appreciated the time that was put in for that. So without going into further details, we've lost lights. All right, there we go. Okay, so having said that, We had an excellent chance today to talk through some things. So with this, we are settled now. Do I have a motion to go ahead and pass Section A on number 2, the personnel listing?
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Schwartz.
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Barclay. Lene, would you please call roll?
Barclay?
Yes.
Schwartz?
Yes.
Wiersma?
Yes. All right, motion passes 3-0. On to number 22, the renewal of Epstein, Becker, and Green Agreement. We have discussion.
Yes, so I had asked for this agenda item to come back, and there was a reason that it was on consent. I know you brought that up, Mr. Schwartz. I did ask Mrs. Lash about this item because all of the other contracts for attorneys were brought back at the same time. All contracts are generally reviewed annually, and they're brought to on consent. So that was the legal opinion that any contract we brought back should be done in the same manner because that's been the practice of the district. That's how we handle contract renewals. And the reason that this would need to be renewed is because it's listed as temporary. And when there is no end date, the legal definition of temporary is 12 months. So I did discuss that with Mrs. Lash. I got some legal counsel on that, and that's where we are. It needs to be back. It needs to be reapproved.
Mr. Schwartz, do you have anything to add?
No.
Okay. So this particular contract is not up for renewal or approval, and therefore it doesn't have validity as an agendized item. Here's an example for us all. If you get married, you make that decision. There's the contract. 20 years later, you might go ahead and decide to renew your vows, which is wonderful. It's ceremonial. Doesn't change the fact of the contract or the marriage. So with this right here, it's important to understand that this contract was written differently. It is internal lawfare at this point to go ahead and move forward with spending the time on this. The ethical choice, in my estimation, is really to be sure that we have a board fully constituted and seated before we make decisions with legal counsel. But again, this particular contract is different. It's not up for approval. It's not up for acceptance. That decision has been made. So this is not valid. It's not an agendized item, and it's really not worth spending any more time on.
Excuse me, it's on the agenda, so it is an agendized item, and I move that we vote on it. So I move that we vote on this renewal.
I would second that. We have a written legal opinion saying it is a valid agendized item, and I know we all three received that. And so it needs to be voted on. And it's not the same as a marriage, because last time I checked, my marriage contract didn't use the word temporary. This is, maybe my
That's a good
husband-
thing.
Maybe my husband would argue that, but 32 years
So
later.
this was agendized. It
just
wasn't
to-
actionable based on the definition of the contract and how it was written. It can only be terminated. Those are the only parameters that are valid. And so what I'm going to do right now is call Mr. Brenner up. He is here. Mr. Brenner, I am giving you
Okay.
the floor to discuss it.
That's
And
not allowable
I do have the
because-
ability to do that. So
No, and I think Dr. Woods can speak to this. We
Yeah,
did
Dr.
consult
Woods,
with legal.
could you please jump in here?
It's a
He's-
conflict.
He's not on the agenda. We haven't allowed any other
Exactly.
entity to make comments during contract.
And
Correct.
We don't
It would be
allow
public comment.
individuals to come and talk about their contracts.
And it's a conflict of
And-
interest.
And it is a conflict of interest.
So
Since
if you had a
excuse me,
different-
can I
sorry,
just
sorry,
finish?
yes.
I already moved and seconded the motion, so Lene, it's up to you to call the roll, please.
this isn't actionable, it's not renewable
Well, you
by
could-
virtue
you
of the
could-
contract. Mr. Brenner, as the presiding officer, I would like you to comment on this. It is important that we're doing this lawfully and correctly.
It is important that we do it lawfully and correctly, and it is not lawful to have something that is not on the agenda, someone speak to that. He is allowed to speak in public comment. We also confirmed this with legal counsel. We have never allowed someone whose contract is on the agenda to speak to it unless that is agendized, and it is not in this case.
Mr. Brenner, is it your understanding that
And
this
it's
is
a
not legal
conflict
to
of
have you go
interest
ahead and speak to an
that he would
agendized
give-
item?
That he would give legal counsel on this.
The presiding
Mrs.
officer
Wiersma,
has
if
recognized
you-
me to speak.
The presiding officer has recognized him to speak. And let me go ahead and give just a little bit of background, Mr. Brenner, if you don't mind. So I want to give a brief summary because there was...
I'm sorry.
Excuse
Jen-
me, I have additional...
No, a point of order, Jen. This is the second time we have a parliamentary issue which you refuse to accept. The motion was made and seconded. It's time for a vote. You could talk all you want, but that's irrelevant. It's time for the vote. I moved the question and Allison seconded it. So either we're going to run by parliamentary procedure or we're not. You can't keep changing the rules because you don't like what's going on. So, Lene, would you please call roll?
We are not going to call
Okay,
the
well,
roll
then
at this
I'm
point when
gonna-
it is not actionable because it was defined differently than how the contract reads.
I'm going to
So as
excuse
the
myself
presiding
for a minute
officer,
and
I'm going to
call
go
my
ahead
attorney.
and you may excuse yourself.
Do you,
Mr. Brenner, I'm going to go ahead and have you address us, please. This
Mrs.
information
Wiersma,
is important.
Do you have someone who does not have a conflict of interest with this contract to speak to it? Do you have another attorney who can weigh in? This is clearly a conflict of interest if Mr. Brenner is speaking about the renewal of his own contract. If you have another legal opinion, bring it forward. We'll
Mr.
listen
Brenner
to
is
it.
the one who wrote the contract. You don't decide the
Correct.
parameters of how his
Correct.
contract reads or how it doesn't.
Correct.
Mr. Brenner, please speak and take the floor.
But this actionable
contract-
item, it's a conflict of interest for him to speak regarding it.
The presiding officer can recognize
Thank you,
someone to
Mr.
speak.
Solano.
A speaker itself doesn't have to be agendized. You can recognize someone to speak and address an agendized item. We should try to reduce the amount of attempts to silence people to speak, especially ones that the presiding officer has recognized. I would also just simply,
Mr. Brenner, could you speak just a little bit louder?
I would simply suggest as well that calls for the vote, calling the question, calling the previous question not be used to attempt to stop and silence other trustees from speaking. On any agendized item, as stated very clearly in your governing handbook, all trustees should have the opportunity to speak and present and discuss whether a motion's pending or not when an agendized item is on topic, which this one is. I don't have a conflict with my contract. My contract was not exclusively written by me. It was negotiated with this board and with staff, Superintendent McClay at the time, and changes were made to the language. The contract is not temporary. The legal services engaged under it are temporary and special, and the contract and engagement is ongoing. It doesn't have any expiration. It doesn't terminate in 12 months. It isn't subject to renewal, as the contract that the board agreed to and approved expressly states. It is terminable at any time by the board. That is the only legitimate action the board can take with regard to this contract, which it can do at any time. There's no effect to a renewal. Certainly you can renew it if you want, but that isn't necessary. The contract is ongoing until terminated. That's what the contract says, and that's how it operates. That is what's happening here. Let me address one other point that was made earlier, the idea that there's a conflict between the board and the district. That is simply not the case. The board is the governing board of the district. It is essentially legally the district itself. My client is the board. That is the district. I'm available to the board. I'm available to Superintendent Woods. I'm available to any of the staff that Superintendent Woods authorizes to consult with me, just as any of the other board's counsel is. I'm available to help the board. I've offered to consult with at any time, take a call at any time from Trustee Schwartz, Trustee Barkley, Trustee Wiersma. All I'm here to do is to help advise the board on legal matters that it wishes to consult me on. Again, at any time the board can terminate my contract. It can do that arguably, whenever that is agendized, that hasn't been agendized yet, so I wouldn't suggest you could do that now. You could agree amongst the three of you to amend the motion that was agendized to terminate the contract and take that up. That would be a legitimate action. But renewal, while you can certainly vote on that, it has no legal effect or impact whatsoever because the contract doesn't expire. It doesn't require renewal. So that's what I have to say on that. I'm happy to answer any questions and address any other issues.
Ms. Wiersma, can Ms. Lash add any comments based on her research on this contract?
Would this be better spent during the legal informational item?
No, I think it addresses this contract
The
specifically.
legal informational item is not mine, so that's, I wasn't planning on presenting on that item. I think it might be helpful, I think where there's some confusion, Lene, do you mind pulling up the contract? And so when Mrs. Barclay called and asked about this specific engagement, if you'll go to the section that says, I believe it's scope of, right there, services to be provided. So the agreed upon motion and board approved contract clearly states, as noted, we are being retained as temporary and special counsel, and we will not be serving in a general counsel role. You may limit or expand the scope of our representation at any time, provided that it is by mutual consent and agreed upon in writing. So what counsel we've received is that there is a term, and the term is temporary. So just because it doesn't have an expiration date doesn't mean there is no term. It means that the term is temporary. And so, just like we agendized every other attorney firm, we should have agendized Mr. Brenner's for the same term. We renew them annually. That way we're not committing future board members potentially to, and again, yes, you could take action to terminate a contract while it is active, but based on this and the motion and action that the board took in January of 2023, we believe that the contract is expired.
And I appreciate those comments and perspective, and it helps to understand where this is coming from, although I do think the true motive here is to simply deny my ability to provide advice to the board and to provide counsel. I mean, that's basically what's going on. There is no reasonable reading, in my view, that there is a term other than the engagement is ongoing and open-ended. Temporary refers to the nature of legal services in particular. So does being retained as special counsel. Saying that the term is over now, or that there is a term, or that the term is 12 months, as Trustee Barkley said earlier, that's obviously imported and being made up. The contract does not contain an expiration. It is ongoing until terminated. That's why it's if you're going to interpret temporary to mean something temporal in terms of scope, that is what makes it temporary. The board can terminate it at any time. If the board wanted a temporary arrangement that was fixed for a duration of time, we certainly could have put that in the agreement. That's what the board could have done. That's not what our understanding was when we were retained. That's not our understanding of this agreement, and I don't think legally that would hold up, candidly. I think that's being imported now for the device of essentially getting rid of Epstein-Becker-Green. The board can do that at any time. All it has to do is agendize the termination of this agreement. But I think it's a stretch, to put it mildly, legally speaking, to say that this is an agreement that has a fixed or endpoint duration or a limited duration in time. It's ongoing until the board terminates it, which it can do at any time. And as Ms. Lash knows and the board knows, that's on the next page of the agreement explicitly.
That's right. The other thing I want to point out, just for the public to be transparent, is a brief summary of why we brought you here. So in 2022, the conservative majority had a crisis of confidence with Todd Atkinson of AALRR. There were some issues that went on. Mr. Brenner was brought on to provide objective and constitutional expertise outside of the educational establishment for the entirety of the board. So he was brought to the forefront of the discussion then. He has not, with me, We have not had a lot of discussions in the last 6 to 10 months. However, in June, when all of the attorneys and firms were presented, Mr. Huff was actually extinguished. The two of you chose to vote him out. He was actually the board attorney counsel for the superintendent. His contract was extinguished, actually much to his surprise. And when I spoke to Mr. Fagan the other night, who is now conferring with Gary Woods, he was shocked as well that we let go of Mr. Huff, who is half the price. He does work within education, and as a result of that being taken away, when I had full faith and confidence with Mr. Huff, I was left returning to Mr. Brenner with some very important questions that needed to be answered. Though he is more expensive, his advocacy for this board, and that's the entire board, not just me, is not his bread and butter. He is not beholden to the administrative state or education. So when he comes in, he has that very constitutional, unbiased perspective that cuts through things very effectively. And so I have full faith and confidence in him, considering what has gone down in the boardroom these last couple of meetings. It was very important for me to be sure that we effectively worked through this, addressed exactly what the contract says and doesn't say, and it does not expire. It is not up for renewal. This right here is, in my justification and perspective, political theater for people to continue to run a narrative in an election cycle. So at this point, it's been a waste of time. I actually asked Dr. Woods to pull it, knowing it wasn't valid. And at this point, this is where we sit. So having said that, Mr. Brenner, we can move on with the vote, but as you've mentioned, anything that we vote on tonight, unless it's a termination which wasn't agendized, it does not change the nature of your contract, correct?
I certainly agree with that. I don't think essentially a ceremonial vote on renewal would have any legal impact. It certainly wouldn't terminate our engagement, and the board and the superintendent would still be authorized under the board's bylaws to consult with me under our engagement. Those are the terms of the engagement, and with the board president, which is you as acting president and presiding officer, or the superintendent's authority, any other individual trustee could reach out to me for legal consultation as well. So you can certainly take the vote. I do think that the vote on what I think is a superficial, essentially advisory act, not an actual real action item, legally speaking, does need to be taken, because a motion has been made and seconded on this agendized item. I just don't think it has any effect. And as I mentioned, you could, I believe, agree, all three of you if you do, to amend the motion to terminate the contract and vote on that. That vote, if it was approved, would be legally effective and would terminate our agreement and engagement as of the moment of the vote. So that could be done. That item could also be brought back as an agendized item, of course, at any future meeting that the board wishes. And of course, in the board's current configuration, when making a decision as significant as terminating the services and availability of legal counsel, it might be prudent and better advised to do that when you're a fully constituted 5-member board, but that's just my personal perspective.
And wouldn't that be an ethical decision to make in terms of the fact that we will go through an election, we will have a fully
I think we
seated
should
board
come
in
back to the
December
board
or January.
discussion, that we're getting into his opinion now on his own contract, which once again is completely a conflict. So I think you could probably have a seat now, Mr. Brenner. I just want to address a couple of items that we've had that you've brought up here. First of all, just as you had issues, trust issues with Atkinson Andelson, I had those same issues as well with Huff. I was not aware that contract was even going to be on the agenda until I got it on Friday. So it was important to me that we moved on from him. And I don't have a problem with that. We have 6 other firms. 6 other firms we have contracts with.
He told me you gave him a hug at CSBA. He was actually shocked.
Huff?
Huff.
Oh,
yeah.
No, I like him as a human. I like almost everyone as a human, pretty much everyone. But, you know, I disagreed with him on quite a few things and was disappointed on some of the advice he gave. So, but that doesn't make me not like him as a human. But back to what we're discussing here is that we have 6 other law firms with dozens of attorneys there, and all of their fees start with a 3, not a 6. And so I don't understand why it would be necessary to keep someone with a temporary contract, as explained by Mrs. Lash and confirmed by legal counsel, that is not this person who's up for renewal. They have confirmed this is a valid action, that this is a temporary contract. And on top of that, you have been using him as general counsel. You just said that in your comments. That is in the contract. He is not to be used as general counsel, right there.
I've also
as
spoken
well
with
as,
Peter
let
Fagan.
me finish right here, as well as Mr. Brenner himself introduced himself as general counsel, which is also a violation of his contract. So I think we need to vote on this contract as presented, as is legally the responsible thing to do. The fiduciary, we have fiduciary responsibility in this district. And why are we spending it $600 on an attorney when we have 6 other firms with dozens of attorneys? You could speak with any one of them. Any one of them can give you a perspective, and that is just fine. But right now, we have a motion on the floor and we need a vote. And in addition, just to address the point about not closing off discussion, I think everyone's forgetting that that motion was originally used on me by the former board majority to shut me up in a discussion. So I just find it ironic and disingenuous when now table turned, you know, I guess that was our practice then, not our practice now, that we could end discussion whenever someone felt like it, when I didn't get a word in edgewise on actually a super shady contract, and nobody cared what I had to say then.
So I went back and watched that special meeting. I actually didn't have commentary as well. Steve Schwartz read a statement for about 4 minutes that explained his viewpoint, and you two have voted in tandem for nearly everything. That was a different kind of meeting where discussion was had. Now, would I have, as president, done the same thing? I don't know. I'm not going to speak to that. That wasn't my decision. But the dissenting viewpoint was represented for almost 4 minutes. It was not apples to apples.
It was, because Joe knew the information that I was going to share, and he did not want to share it. You could go back
Dr.
on that.
Komrosky is no longer here.
Well, I'm not
so we
gonna
don't
get
need to
into it, but
continue to debate that.
That's just a fact of the matter. That is a
will
fact of the
decide
matter.
where it goes from here. But at this point, the only actionable way to do this is if the, excuse me, please. The only actionable way to do this is if it's amended, and this is a vote to terminate the contract. Otherwise, there is no movement with this. Yes, go ahead.
Even Mr.
Are you
Brenner
done?
had to take the
Okay,
votes.
Dr. Woods, can I refer to you, and you investigated this issue? Can you tell us what our legal counsel, general legal counsel, told us about this, whether or not this motion was valid or invalid?
He said it met all the legal requirements. What's important is you have to conduct the business in the public. Obviously, I can advise you that any decision you make tonight may be challenged, for sure.
That's fine. No problem.
Well, and there won't be a decision unless it's actually amended and the motion comes in terms of the parameters of the contract. So
Jen,
this
Mr. Brenner even just said that we had to vote on it. He just said that.
That's right. I'm not denying that. So
Okay,
if
so
you
we need
vote
to
to
vote on it.
renew, it will, we can go that direction. It's not valid. If we want to vote to terminate and one of you wants to amend that, we can do it that way.
No, that's your opinion that it's not valid. I have legal opinion that it is valid. So I guess they'll decide it. We can only do what we believe is right. And I believe this is right. You believe that's right. So fine, take the vote, and then we'll let the legal people work it out. Yep.
Mr. Brunner, do you have any comment in terms, I would like to bring you back one more time. He's here and we're paying for him, so we might as well hear from him. What does that look like behind the scenes?
I don't, as I've said, I do not think that a vote to renew a contract that doesn't require, need, or necessitate renewal would have any legal effect. The contract and my engagement by the board remains in place until the board terminates the contract, which it can do at any time under the explicit terms of the contract. it's noteworthy that a motion to renew was agendized rather than a motion to terminate in light of the express language of the agreement that the board approved by vote. Superintendent Woods is correct and careful to say that he was advised that the agendized item met all legal requirements. That's to agendize it. Whether there would be any legal effect of a renewal of a contract that doesn't require that is an entirely separate matter, which Superintendent Woods was correct not to get into. I've already spoken to that. I have never, ever introduced myself as the general counsel to the board. I have always provided special counsel to the board as it's been requested. And in terms of my fees and my rate, it's again a little bit of language play, I would suggest, in only referring to the rate. I am quite independent. I am much more independent than your other law firms who rely almost exclusively as a firm or in their practice teams on district work. That tends to, all lawyers have a duty of advocacy and ethical responsibilities, but when lawyers, doctors, any other profession is beholden to a specific set of clients or a specific industry, it can impact the relationship.
This is extremely
that
inappropriate
that is
you are
why
selling
I was retained.
your contract
I'm being
to this
interrupted.
board. It's
I-
extremely
He's not selling it, it's already in
He
place.
just did. He's
I'm being
selling
interrupted.
himself to this board. It's
Mrs.
extremely
Barclay?
inappropriate
I'm
and
being-
a conflict
I'm
Mrs.
of
being
Barclay, let him
interrupted.
finish.
Oh my gosh. Take the vote, Jen.
The rate is what constantly is referred to. My rate is significantly discounted, as noted. But right here on this board's agenda, you have a summary, synopsis in the board materials that anyone can look at online on the agenda of the legal fees you have paid to your law firms over the last several years, all the way back to 2019, 2020. You have paid hundreds of thousands of dollars, not just to one law firm, but to at least two or three every one of those years. Not for the board. For me, you have paid $20,000, $30,000 last year. That's really where this is at. That's why I am special counsel. I am not general counsel. Believe me, if I was, there'd be a lot more on those ledgers. And I'm still general counsel, or not general counsel, but special counsel until you terminate the contract. And if board members want the contract terminated, if you want to extinguish my services, agendize that, have the vote and the discussion, and do it as often as you would like.
With all due respect, and I appreciate your sharing what you did with us, according to our superintendent and according to what you said, we could take the vote. It might not have legal effect, but since the item is agendized, it's been moved and seconded, we're going to take a vote. And if it finds that it has no legal effect, then that be the case. And if it does, then that be the case. But I think we want to move on. And I appreciate your comments, all due respect to you and your education, but we're going to move on and take the vote right now. Thank you.
I certainly agree that the motion is pending, and when you're ready, the vote should be taken. Thank
Mr.
you.
Brenner, thank you for your clarification. And just for the record, I want to state ethically, what would behoove us all is to allow a newly constituted board to be seated for discussions like this. So let's move on and go through the motions. Remind me who moved it?
I did.
Okay, so this was moved by
Me and
Mr.
seconded by
Schwartz.
others.
It was seconded by Mrs. Barclay. Lene, would you please call the roll?
Barclay?
No,
Schwartz?
we're not, because the motion is to renew the contract.
Correct.
I am
No.
voting no.
Wiersma?
I am an abstain. This is not actionable. The motion on the floor
You
fails.
can't abstain.
You have to vote one way or the other. The reasons for abstention are a personal
Turn your microphone on, Steve.
interest, a personal interest, a contract that you're involved in, or a real estate thing. So those are the reasons for abstention.
Mr. Brenner, back please to the floor. What I read as an abstention is actually a no. Could you clarify?
Generally, an abstention should be reserved for conflicts, interested board member issues, and the like. Abstentions are not favored, but an abstention from a point of conscience certainly can be done. You have the right to abstain. No one can force you to vote or force you not to abstain.
Great, thank you for the clarification. I will continue abstaining. The motion remains on the floor, I guess unanswered at this point. There is no majority on this particular item. So the motion does not carry. Just for clarification.
So the contract is not renewed.
The motion is not actionable in that term. It is not up for any more discussion at this point. Is there anything further, Mr. Brenner, we need to add to the conversation? We're good. All right, let's go ahead and move on.
Moving on.
We're going to move on. We're going to move on. All right, we're going to go to action items. I believe we have public comment. Two action is what I have. Okay, so we have for number one, the public hearing. Come on down.
Emil Barham?
Okay, so I guess he is not here, not outside, not here. Okay. I call for a motion and a second to conduct a public hearing regarding resolution number 2024-25/15 and certification of sufficiency of textbooks and instructional materials compliance for fiscal year 2024-2025. Do I have a motion?
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Schwartz. I will go ahead and second it. Lene, would you please call roll?
Barclay?
Yes.
Schwartz?
Yes.
Wiersma?
Yes. Motion adopted 3-0. We will now move on to conduct the public hearing.
Too late.
Oh, he's here. Is it too late? Okay, we've moved on to the public hearing. So, I'm sorry. We called for you. Yes. Perfect. You're going to comment during the public hearing. Don't go anywhere. We don't usually have someone comment during this, but thank you for clarification. All right.
That's how public hearing works.
Yes. All right. Could I have some silence, please? Thank you. This is the time and place designated for the public hearing to review and consider resolution number 2024-25/15 and certification of sufficiency of textbooks and instructional materials compliance for fiscal year 2024-2025. I declare the hearing now open at 7:10 p.m. Staff, is there any discussion needed? All right. Is there anyone who wishes to comment on resolution number 2024/25/15 and certification of sufficiency of textbooks and instructional materials compliance for fiscal year 2024-2025? A total of 30 minutes is provided, so members of the public can address the board. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. All right. If so, please state your name prior to making your comments. So we have one. I'm sorry for the angst. I thought you wanted to speak prior. So come on down. We welcome you. Thank you for being here.
Sorry about that. Emil Barham here. I'm glad that we've gone through the legal process here and that we have sufficiency, as opposed to last year when we had some difficulty. Mrs. Barclay, You may censor me. I cannot believe what you did to me as a community member, okay, laughing and collaborating with the audience. That just goes to show that you don't value community by laughing at somebody who's up, trying to be solution-oriented.
Mr. Barham,
I know. Goodbye.
you need to discuss the item.
Thank you.
Okay.
Can I just ask, Dr. Velez, you're the one who put the motion. Is everything okay? We have what we need?
Yes, thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Schwartz. We have
Thank you.
everything we need, and we are required by Ed Code to have this actually approved by the board.
I know. Thank you.
All right, so I'm assuming there are no more comments. If there are no more comments, I will declare that this public hearing is closed. Public hearing
7:12.
end time, 7:12. Thank you, Mr. Schwartz.
You're welcome.
Okay. Moving on to number 2, resolution number 2024-25/15, and certification of sufficiency of textbooks and instructional materials compliance for the fiscal year 2024-2025. I call for a motion and a second to adopt resolution number 2024-25/15 and certification of sufficiency of textbooks and instructional materials compliance for fiscal year 2024-2025.
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Schwartz.
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Barclay. Lene, please call roll.
Barclay?
Yes.
Schwartz?
Yes.
Wiersma?
Yes, motion adopted 3-0. Thank you, Lene. All right, so we're moving on to number 3, the board assignment for the 2024-2025 school year. I call for a motion and second to approve this board assignment for the 2024-2025 school year. I will move.
I'll second it. I just want to check with Mr. Arce, who put it on the agenda, that everything is up to date.
Yeah, these
Thank
are all
you.
in accordance with Ed Code and CTC that allows these board authorizations, so
Good. Thank you.
recommendation is approved.
Second.
All right, any other conversation, questions? We're good? All right, Lene, would you please call roll?
Barclay?
Yes.
Schwartz?
Yes.
Wiersma?
Yes, motion adopted, 3-0. Thank you, Lene. All right, next we're moving on to the resolution 2024-25/16, the proclamation of National Immigrants Day. I call for a motion and a second to adopt resolution 2024-25/16, the proclamation National Immigrants Day. We had a comment. So we have 2 speakers, so before we vote, let's go ahead and have our speakers come forward. Thank you for being here.
First up is Christine Massa, followed by Upnate.
Hello again, board and staff. I'm here to support the resolution to recognize National Immigrants Day. I mean, obviously, if you're not Indigenous, you're either the descendant of an immigrant or you're an immigrant. And I'm a second-generation American myself. My grandparents all came over from Italy. My father even has his father's papers from Ellis Island, something we're proud of. And I know my mother-in-law has all their family documents framed. It's really heartwarming to see whenever you go to her house. My heart was breaking when I heard the speakers in public comment. I'm a recruiter, I work in HR. I see visa issues all the time with people who just want to come here and contribute, right? There's so many fallacies about immigrants. People who say they're here to freeload or they're here to commit crime. I don't know any immigrants who are here to do any of those things. They just want to come here to have a better life, to support their families, via legal means that are insurmountable in our government today. When people say our immigration system is broken, it's not because of the number of people who want to enter our country or at the border. It's because we make it so darn hard for them to legally stay and contribute. That's what we have to fix. We need to recognize the contributions of our immigrant community. They're the reason our country is great. All our cultures coming together should be celebrated, especially during Hispanic Heritage Month, right? While immigrants may be discussed in social studies curriculum, having the district recognize this holiday can perpetuate more opportunities to commemorate, say, language arts, PE, right? You name it. Please adopt the recognition of National Immigrants Day. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Massa.
Upney?
So we heard quite a few people talk about their immigration. My journey was quite different. I came here because I got married, and I had to go through like a really long process even then to go through and get my visa. It's a year-long process. Everybody's favorite joke was just walk across the border. Nobody cares. Why do you have to wait for a year? And so that process starts like a year before you're even, I wasn't even married. And then you basically fill out a lot of paperwork. You have to get a police report get all your papers, your degrees, certificates, whatever it is, get everything in order. Proof that you're actually marrying, not for immigration. You have to give proof for that. Then you have one interview, then you have another interview. And so first you have an interview in the country of residence. Then you have an interview 2 years after you're married where they'll go over, are you still married? And you're actually living together. And then you get your temporary green card, then you get your permanent green card. Then after 5 years of being married, then you can actually apply for your citizenship. The citizenship process requires you to fill out, there's a lot of paperwork and thousands of dollars just to go through that process, just to become a citizen. And it is a very, so every immigrant, I'm sure, has a different background. My grandmother was born in Uganda. My husband's grandparents were born in Burma. It used to be all the British Empire at that time, so they were all over the place. And one of my grandfathers was a very small-time farmer whose mother saw that the son has a lot of potential, and she should invest in education rather than this lady worked day and night because the brothers are like, oh, why do you want to educate? He's going to move away, and who's going to look after the buffaloes? But she saw the potential. He was the first person to be educated in the family, and just to honor his mother, he did push for education of girls, because he said when you educate a girl, you're basically educating the entire generation. She will make sure that the entire generation gets educated. So everybody's background is different. A lot of trauma. The immigrants do come with a lot of trauma. Some of them have escaped horrific circumstances. And I hear a lot of I'm really glad people talked about how we should honor immigrants and stuff. But I see the same people come up here and beat down on diversity. We shouldn't have diverse perspectives. What is diversity? It is a very simple thing. My daughter started kindergarten, and I went to volunteer in her class, and I said, oh, Mrs. Keller, Dhaliwal is a very hard name to pronounce. They can call me Mrs. D. And she's like, why? They can say Pokemon names just fine. They can say your last name. So that is all diversity is. There is nothing sinister going on anywhere. And thank you for putting this on.
Thank you. All right, before we go through the motions, I know, Mr. Schwartz, you brought this to the table. Would you like to discuss?
I saw this, someone sent it to me, and I was surprised by who authored it originally. Not someone who I see as, well, never mind, it's irrelevant. We're all children of immigrants, unless you're Native American. My grandfather on my father's side came here as a young man. My father and all his siblings were born here. None of us know anything about Austria, where he came from, except I visited there, and it's a beautiful country. My mother and all her siblings came here from Poland to escape. Some of them never got out. Some of them wound up dying in the Holocaust. And I really think it's critical that we all recognize that 99% of us, and it might even be a higher percentage, are immigrants or children of immigrants, and that we recognize the contributions of the different groups who have come here. Some of them were treated really poorly. I know when the railroads were built across America, the Chinese did a tremendous amount of work, and they were just treated absolutely horribly. So it's really important to me that we recognize the contributions of all our ancestors, and that we honor their culture, their language, and that we commit to treating everyone the way we want to be treated. And that, to me, is my tenet of life, the golden rule. Treat everyone the way you want to be treated. Thank you.
Mrs. Barclay?
I would just echo what Mr. Schwartz said. I was really happy to see you put this on the agenda. I think that we can all do better. Honoring our immigrants, learning more, coming from a place of understanding and listening, I think is really key. You know, I was answering some questions this week, and someone asked, you know, what do you do to represent the diverse populations of the district? And I thought, oh, well, you know, for over 30 years, that's been my life's work, is working with people from all sorts of backgrounds and kids and families. But then I really started thinking about, what do I do? What do I do? What do we do as a district? So I reached out to a couple of people from some different communities and said, what do you think? What could I do better? What could our district do better? And they were so generous and gracious and got back to me and gave me a whole list of things I could do better. I'm like, this is fantastic. So I was reaching out to Dr. Velez today to get some more information. I got some information about some community events coming up, and you know, this just kind of flowed right into this this resolution that I think, you know, even though we might think we're doing well, I'm sure we can all do better. And this is a great reminder, you know, to honor our immigrants and to really come from a place of understanding. As has been said multiple times, we're all immigrants unless you are Indigenous, and so I think that this will serve as a great reminder, and appreciate you for putting on, Mr. Schwartz.
So the first thing I want to do is thank members of the Indian community for being here tonight. Thank you. We welcome you, and I think we grow more golden as a district as we reach out to different facets in the community. We want to hear you. We want to see you, and I know it can be intimidating to come in. So thank you. I really appreciate you being here. Perhaps there's more TVUSD can do. Perhaps we can contact Daryl Ice's office and see what we can do in terms of that. So we'll be in touch, but just know we value you being here in this country. I think Mr. Schwartz and Mrs. Barclay are correct. Here in California, we are so blessed to be in a melting pot. We've got diversity in culture, ethnicity, tradition, faith.
Food.
It's one reason why. Food. Yeah. We've got it all. Here in California, we're so fortunate. And I love that my children have grown up with so many different friends from different communities. As I delved into looking at this resolution, I did some study this weekend on the Founding Fathers and immigrants. And it's interesting, I wanted to share this. Most of the Founding Fathers were of English ancestry. They had family roots that extended through the British Isles, including Scotland, Wales, and Ireland. People who came to this country after the Declaration of Independence from England are considered immigrants to the United States. Europeans who lived prior to 1776 in the English colonies along the Atlantic coast that became the 13 original states are usually referred to as colonists. What I loved to read is that the Founding Fathers definitely favored immigration. They were hoping that the new country would serve as a place for refugees, as well as it should. 7 of the 39 signers of the Constitution were immigrants, including Alexander Hamilton and James Wilson. They were also colonists of England who came here to fight for natural rights and self-government promised to them when they set up colonies. So as I read through this, loved it, I do have a couple things to consider that I would like to bring in addition to what we have here. Whereas our nation celebration of Immigrants' Day is a moving reminder that America is unique among the nations. We are the sons and daughters of every land across the face of the earth, yet we are an indivisible nation. And I would like to add, as our pledge echoes, under God. One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. It's a phrase that we start every meeting with, and I think that's important. So that's one for you to think about. And then skipping down a couple paragraphs, whereas immigrants have always brought great gifts to their new home on these shores, the gifts of hardiness and heart, of intellect and hope. over 200 years ago, I would like to put immigrants and colonists were among the framers of the Constitution for these United States. I feel like as you look at history, in being inclusive and representing the fact of all that we are as Americans today, that's something that stood out to me as well. So those are my two proposals for consideration. What say you?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So we are an indivisible nation under God. We'll add that. Allison, Mrs. Barclay, anything you'd like to add?
My main hesitation with the word colonist is that it's just come to have a different meaning, and I don't know if that is really what we want to have added. You know, when you Google it, and I hear what you're saying, Jen, you know, like the original meaning and that we use that term, you know, when we're talking about U.S. history. But I think it's come to mean something different. When you Google it, it does say colonism is the exploitation of people and resources by a foreign group. So I don't know that adding that term, even though I understand from an educational standpoint what you're saying,
Right.
I feel like it might have a negative connotation just because the way that it's currently looked at.
And it's unfortunate that connotation actually comes from tenets of critical race theory, the oligarchy, the patriarchy, the colonists. They've actually hijacked those terms, and it's unfortunate because colonists did represent those very people that we mentioned. They came from English colonies. They became the 13 original states. That's technically and educationally who they were, and it's too bad that today we've decided to take that, smear it, and make it something that it's not. And honestly, I hope that we all can look at this and recognize all the groups of people, and that was my hope tonight. So I don't know, Mr. Schwartz, if you want to comment on that. I'm not going to hold it up because I don't feel like arguing this point is...
And I wouldn't, I mean, personally, I wouldn't take it that far. I don't think that term has anything to do whatsoever with CRT. I think terms change over time. What we might have said as kids have a different meaning now, and that's just kind of over time. Words change. Swear words used to mean something that doesn't mean.
I'm sorry. Could we change it from colonists to settlers?
That's a good question. How about founders?
Or
settlers?
Where can I ask Steve? Was this where the resolution originally came from?
what?
Like where you found this?
Yeah,
the wording of this resolution.
It was originally posted by the governor of California, who decided that we should celebrate immigrants. So I just copied it from that governor's.
Governor Newsom?
No, Governor Reagan.
Governor Reagan. Okay. Just
You know,
just
I didn't
clarifying.
want to go there.
I wasn't sure.
I didn't want to go there.
No,
but
it was just an honest
No,
question.
excuse me.
Go ahead.
You see, I didn't want to go there, and I purposely didn't mention the person's name, but you decided to turn it into a political thing, and it's not a political thing. It's
It was
a
just an honest
human
question.
thing.
No, that's great. It was
And
just
no,
an honest
I don't
question.
want any changes. I wanted its original form. So either we vote for it or against it in its original form. I don't want any changes.
Just to clarify, so we've landed now at a place of frustration and not wanting to put under God, and neither do we want to be inclusive and put immigrants and colonists.
I'm not frustrated at all. I know exactly what I wrote. I'm not frustrated.
But you're rescinding the under God aspect.
We didn't vote to put them in. You suggested that we put them in, and I don't agree with that. I want it just the way I wrote it. So we could vote for it.
Did you write it or did Reagan write it?
The way I copied it from Governor Reagan, I put it on the agenda.
Because he originated this
Who originated
concept.
it,
Okay.
yes.
Were these
That's
his
where it
words
came
or was
from.
it an adaptation?
No, I think he said this is the original one that was used.
I sent it to Lene, and those are the original words, correct, Lene?
That's correct. The only thing that was changed is like the 137th anniversary instead of the one you sent said like 101st or something.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for sharing about the fact that this did originate with Reagan. He had quite the faith, and actually in working with the Pope helped bring down communism. So I appreciate you sharing that, and if you don't want to collaborate on that, that's okay. Let's go ahead and move to make the motion. Would you like to move
Moved.
it? All right, moved by Mr. Schwartz.
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Barclay. Ann Lene, would you please call roll?
Barclay?
Yes.
Schwartz?
Yes.
Wiersma?
And I will say yes to this. It's more important to me that you know, as our melting pot, we appreciate everything that you are. I appreciate this country, all that we add together. So thank you. The motion is adopted 3-0. All right, so now we are going to move into the next section, information and reports. And on the docket, we have that very simple topic of legal expenditures. 5 speakers. So thank you for being here. We're going to go ahead and get started with that first.
First up is Jean Femia, followed by Christine Massa.
Hello again. I didn't talk at all at the last meeting, so, I'm making up for lost time. You've all had a chance to review the legal expenditure tables attached to this information item, and they show a progression of increasing expenses that I find a little concerning. The items I'm especially interested in are the legal expenses incurred by the board and the superintendent. These are legal fees not for facilities or safety, not for human resources or negotiations, not for parents who are seeking the best for their special ed students. These are just for the school board and the superintendent. So for the school years fall of 2019 to summer of 2022, the percentage of board and superintendent legal fees ran 5 to 9% of the total legal expenses. In the 2022 to 23 year, that percentage jumped to 14%. And in 2023-24, it was 27% of all legal fees. That is a huge change, and I can't help but think that the previous board majority's view of district staff as adversaries fueled that change. Not a single student benefited from these expenses. I urge the current trustees and everyone who is running for school board to commit to reducing legal expenses starting now. We have too many important things to do to waste money on attorneys. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. Christine Massa, followed by David Sola.
Hello again. I want to start by saying, Mrs. Lash, you're a boss. All the information that you've added on the contracts and the gathering of the legal expenditures, and it was fascinating to look at the 5-year view. I like data. So like the eloquent Mrs. Bemia, I did some analysis. Obviously, since the new board took power, the expenses grew first year by nearly $100,000, then ballooned by almost $500,000 the first full year of the new board. And when you look at one item in particular, and of note, Mr. Brenner compares fees, you have to look at the individual line items, not how much you're spending with a special purpose law firm that we use for other things. The total of expenses spent on board items went from 0, the beginning of analysis, to $45,000, which is COVID times, so you imagine there's some unique circumstances there, and it went back down the next year to about $35,000. And then the year the new board takes over, so there for about a half a year, it goes back up to $40K. And then the full year of the conservative board majority, it balloons to $150,000. It's more than a 300% increase since COVID, just for board items, and more than the last prior 4 years combined. Why? Why does that happen? And that didn't even include whatever billing we've accrued with advocates of faith and freedom, which we now know, because of the earlier public comment, is upwards of $160,000. So now we have more than $300,000 in legal costs the last full year of the conservative board majority, a 600% increase, and it must stop. Like, why is Mr. Brenner still here? Is he billing us for these hours? I wish he had more of a social life, had a birthday party to go to like the other lawyer. So this is exorbitant. I'm working on trying to get $12,000 in funding for coaches at 3 high schools, and our teams can't afford buses, and we're paying lawyers all this money. Please stop the wasteful spending. You don't have to consult lawyers, the most expensive lawyers, for everything, Jen. You have a very knowledgeable staff who can advise you with the years of experience they have that you don't. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Massa.
David Sola, followed by Upney.
Thank you. I can wait. That's fine. I don't charge $650 an hour, so.
I am going to take a 5-minute recess, just so. Thank you. I'll be right back. We'll be back.
Ms. Wurzmeyer, are we ready to return?
All righty-o, I know that was a long break, but it's not even 8 o'clock yet. So, no, don't be sorry. We all needed our break. All right, we're going to start in 1 minute. So grab your seat, and we'll get back to it with Mr. Sola in just a minute. You got a minute, 1 minute. All right, welcome back. Mr. Sola, come on up. I'm sorry for leaving earlier, just want to apologize.
No worries
Thank
at
you
all,
for
no
being
worries.
here.
Thank you. Thank you, board members, distinguished staff. Like I said, I don't charge $650 an hour, so just like all the people that are still here, I'm here because I care. And I don't know how many of you on the board, or I know that Mrs. Lash has some kids in the district, but I don't know how many of you have kids or neighbors that have kids or grandkids in our schools. But as a parent with children on cheer teams, the school band, and what seemed to be a never-ending amount of other activities requiring fundraising, I come to you with a legitimate concern. As any parent in the district can attest to, fundraising is the only way these programs succeed. And yet, as I find myself volunteering for another fundraiser for another activity, I can't help but wonder why we can't fund these programs better in our schools. It's not just that, though, because I truly have no problem giving my time to my children and their friends so that they can enjoy every second of their childhood in these programs. What I don't understand is how the parents bear the burden of that fundraising, and yet this board spent 5 times the amount of money on legal fees than it had in previous years. So let me understand something. We don't have money to fund our programs that allow our kids to be kids, but we do have money to take our crusades to the state to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars? It's rhetorical, of course. Your focus is on your own agenda and not on the kids. Of course, why should the previous board majority care about our kids when their previous board president wouldn't even enroll his own child in our district, even while holding that same gavel that you bang so violently? Even while making those decisions in a vacuum. So I'm sure, as much as it pains you to hear me say these words, let's stop the performance, stop trying to scare people, and let's put our money where it should be, with our children, and not with some law firm that happens to completely agree with how one of you think.
Thank you. Up, Nate, followed by Steve Campos.
So people seem to think that I'm in love with my voice. I'm not. Public speaking is not my favorite thing to do. I did it a lot at school, and I kind of, personal tragedy, I kind of lived as a recluse for almost 20 years. And this is not the most fun activity to do, but fundraising, I'm going to come back to the same thing. If you remember, the first time I ever came up here was because of transportation. Our current band ask, initially it was $400, $500. Everybody talks about inflation. Everything is getting expensive. And the current ask is $800 per parent. We talk about how great our schools are, but a lot of the programs are supported by parents and fundraising. And that is what actually makes a district great, involved parents. And a lot of us spend a lot of time, volunteer our time, funds, et cetera, and then when money is wasted, because everybody keeps telling me, oh, you cost the district $75,000, I was like, I never imagined somebody would go to court over stupid red cards. I never, ever imagined somebody would be that egoistic and stubborn. And I never thought I would see the person signed a letter in October, but continued with his own behavior, so leaving no choice but to go to court. And things like this. I sat in on a public hearing for a PERB complaint, changing contracts unilaterally. Everybody who's here, they know there's a process to follow to change a contract, do anything whenever there's an employment contract. The HRD expenses, that is I have absolutely no idea. Is there multiple harassment suits being filed? What is happening? A PERB complaint, I get it. I sat in on one of them. the flag regulation one, it was quite a bit of comedy, entertainment. I put on my headphones while I was programming, I was listening to it. The judge's expressions, like what is going on, I'm sure Brenner, Mr. Brenner also feels it like every time he's here. Just right now, I donated some pencils to Margarita Middle School, artist pencils, $800. We are going to give almost the same amount for him for being here. For what? Just so that he can back you up and prove you and stuff. Everything doesn't have to be like, oh, back in the day, I really yearn for the good old days where, somebody said something, you're like, okay, and there wasn't no Google, or now, like, oh, I Googled it, now I'm going to get a lawyer to back me up. I am right. It is way out of hand. I have no idea. There was one perp complaint that the district lost. They're going to end up paying, like, I don't know, they ended up paying like $40,000 for negotiating, changing a contract unilaterally. And for what? You could have just waited for the term. The superintendent, they're like, oh, that didn't cost that much, $362,000. You probably paid her down payment for her next house. She's going to be living in a different wine country now.
Thank you. Steve Campos, followed by, last speaker, Steve.
So initially, the reason why I was requesting a point of order was because I'm a little confused. I thought that we were not allowed to publicly campaign, and I don't know if T-shirts are part of that, because if that's the case, and I guess it's free for all, that we can all wear whoever we support while the camera's on us and out to the public. So that was just one thing. I thought that was a form of campaigning. Also, another question. Does the board require a 3-0 or unanimous vote without a fully constituted vote on any action item or any items that they are voting for? Just want clarification at some point. It doesn't have to be now. You can do it during your board commentary. And also, the last thing, according to Robert Rules of Order, an item can only be brought back for discussion or another vote if the trustee who is bringing it back voted on the prevailing side. It seems that sometimes board members come up here and they're bringing up issues and they did not vote on the prevailing side. That being said, that item cannot be put back forward. So in the future, and these are questions that I'm just asking you to go ahead and figure out. Now, in terms of the legal expenses, Trustee Schwartz and Barclay have created unnecessary expenses as previously stated. As trustees, they sign off on it, well, all of you, sign off on every action item. Therefore, the attorneys are here to ensure that the LEA, which is TVUSD, is conducting business legally and also defending the LEA in areas where there is illegal activity, and that does happen. Today's costs for Mr. Brenner can be added to Trustee Schwartz and Barclay's foolishness, because it's these kind of things that continue to come up, and he wouldn't necessarily need to be here if there would have been clarification as to what was going on earlier. And so their supporters always seem to want to blame, the former conservative board or Dr. K or whoever it is. In this case now it's Jen. But the reality is they're the ones that are running amok and coming up here and requiring things to be spent on. But yet they never want to take any responsibility for that. Yet they're the ones that are incurring those costs. It's really shameful, and it's an embarrassment, and it is. It's costly to the district. I would hope that when they do their research, like the Brown Act one, that they would kind of look into it themselves, save some money. Maybe ask somebody who has parliamentary understanding, and that's not the case. Orbach, Henderson, and Huff, just so you guys know, great legal firm. Letting them go is a huge mistake. Increasing legal fees are standard, especially under the president, under the current presidential administration that has created incredible inflation. Mr. Brenner's services would have never been sought had the former award-winning superintendent understood what her job was and didn't create so many issues within the district. Thank you and have a good night.
Thank you.
Since I added this item, I'll just go ahead and get started with the discussion. I appreciate most of the comments that were made that were accurate. So this, actually, I believe that this summary that was provided to us was requested by Mrs. Wiersma, and when I received it, I thought it was important that it be put on the board agenda as an information item because it has been requested numerous times. I've received emails, we've heard it here at the podium many times, people asking about legal fees. So I thought since we had this information, it was very important to bring it to the public, for the public to see it and to do what they will. I personally I assumed that this is what we would see, a steady increase in legal fees. I will say I was actually shocked at the level once you add it all together, and I did some math myself. And I think what needs to be noted here is that people who possibly have only paid attention to this board since the board majority took over may not be familiar with kind of the normal routine of a board in other districts or prior to the situation in this district, prior to COVID, kind of how boards operate and how board meetings operate. I know a lot of people in other boards, I know a lot of people in San Diego County because that's where I work, and school boards there. And they're very routine and mundane for the most part. Legal counsel is rarely required at the board or superintendent level because most things that are discussed are fairly routine. Usually legal counsel is required in these other areas that we see here, like facilities, HR, special education, those kinds of things. Those are kind of the routine things you normally see. But when you look at our listing and you go back to 2019 and it's 46,000, 44,000, 34,000. That's like a routine amount of money that would be needed just to kind of maintain moving forward of a district. Our district did not have any large overarching issues. We were a very viable employer. We were a very sought after district. We're very well recognized, well awarded, not without our failings, obviously. No district is perfect. Definitely had areas of improvement that we were chipping away at. Facilities is one. Testing scores is another that we were moving slowly, as it is, kind of a slow process to move a giant ship of a district in a certain direction. However, you see, and the numbers don't lie, that when the board majority came on, the numbers skyrocketed. And it is for a variety of reasons. And you really have to look at not only the superintendent and board, but also the HRD number. And that was brought up. And I don't know if people recall, but in the past, in the normal course of any city or school district, there are public records requests on occasion. However, once things started looking a little bit suspicious to many people, those skyrocketed, and we had to hire a completely new full-time position to handle that because we were bombarded because of some of the things going on at the board level. And, the Brown Act violation has been brought up numerous times. And I will remind people, the details are not public because it was in closed session, but there were options provided that would have cost $0. But that was not what was decided on. So I just want to, I personally am interested in reducing these fees for whatever reason that we have had them in the past. I have personally been involved for many years fundraising, headed up fundraising for my kids, where every $50 Chipotle night donation was exciting. And then when you look at these numbers, it's kind of sickening to a parent who's out there hawking, gift wrap and cookie dough and all the things to get these little tiny donations so that their kid can get a bus to their next game. So I really feel like it's important that all of us sitting up here really take that pledge that we need to move forward and move away from this really kind of crazy use of attorneys. It should be unnecessary. We shouldn't have this many questions about what's legal and what's not if we are following what we're required to do, if we're following Ed Code, if we're following the direction that we are given as a public entity, as a public district. We shouldn't have this many issues under HRD or under superintendent or board. And that's what I'm hopeful for, is that we can all kind of look at this and realize where we've been, where we are now, and what do we want for the future. We want a different picture so that we don't see these kinds of numbers again. I mean, going from $497,000 to $1.2 million. I mean, enough said.
I will second everything Allison said, and just FYI, I have never called an attorney. If I think something's illegal, I don't do it. And I don't understand why the former board majority felt it was so necessary to constantly call attorneys to get opinions. If you don't think something's legal, then don't do it, or ask somebody. You don't have to call an attorney to find out if it's legal. Secondly, I want to correct something Mr. Tyler said when he was here. He said he represents the board. No, he does not represent me, because I have a separate attorney from JPA who I don't have to pay for. It's provided to us because I separated myself from that lawsuit, and Allison also did the same. So the only person Mr. Tyler represents at this point is Mrs. Wiersma, because he does not represent me or Allison. And a lot of this money that has been spent, as Allison said, is because of public records requests, people calling HR all the time. I keep getting emails. I need every email you've ever sent to XYZ person, and somebody at the district now has to go through that, and it's a crazy amount of money. As one of our speakers said, when you do things like hold up cards and get sued and you lose, there are legal fees involved. So as far as I'm concerned, I don't call lawyers. I never do, and I never will. Thank you.
A couple of important points. It is true, we should work as a board to streamline legal expenses. I will say, when you look at the past, maybe even pre-COVID, things were different. We are living in a different era. It is true that districts will do different things with council. Many times when you have union-endorsed trustees and everyone is of one mindset, there might be some fewer issues. So that may be true. One reason that I keep coming back to and looking at some of these fees is understanding the level of internal and external lawfare. It is a real thing. When people are requesting FOIA reports, which that is their right, it does indeed take time. When people are running resistance with perhaps a board majority duly elected in the community to do things differently, there will be resistance. I think one thing that helped me today is sitting in the office, the business office, and looking at some of the itemized lists of the legal fees. And here's what I realized. I don't know what Dr. Komrosky did, but there were a lot of things in that pile that were very helpful for me to evaluate. We don't have the ability to break it down tonight, but there is a lot that goes on that people aren't aware of. So it's a little nebulous tonight to look at the increase and be able to pinpoint with precision where it went. So I'm going to continue to look at some of those. It is important. And as we've talked about tonight, yes, if there's an allegation of a Brown Act issue, it could cost $25,000, $30,000. Mr. Schwartz, I know you mentioned that you don't reach out to the lawyers, and I'm not going to say much about what I looked at today, but I know that with filing against a citizen, there being a restraining order, and all the things that went down, I did see the fact that legal has to oversee some of that, and it is part of doing business. That ended up costing us $20,000, $25,000, quite a bit of money. It takes a board majority decision to actually issue a restraining order. And I believe
No,
Mr. Huff also,
Excuse me, it takes a court, not a board.
Okay,
We don't
excuse me.
issue restraining orders. And if your life is threatened, I certainly hope you will defend yourself against the person who threatened your life. So let's not talk about
Mr. Schwartz.
personals, okay?
Mr. Schwartz. There is a constitutional right to speech that swings all ways. It should be that we each have the ability to speak and not censor one another. I want to give you an example because people were asking about the parental right policy. And as I go through this will probably help you understand some of the legal issues. There were documents hidden from the board with the parental right policy. In February of 2024, a superior state judge ruled favorably on our parental right policy and the critical race theory resolution. Interestingly, as a result, someone on the inside filed a uniform complaint to the California Department of Education. That is their right. I won't be revealing names. So from that point, you then had the CDE come down and intimidate our superintendent, who then received some legal counsel and decided to make the decision, in a sense, to fold and go ahead and send all of our community a letter that nullified the parental right policy. The CDE, a superintendent, do not have the lawful ability to do that, and that is important. Now, I didn't have Mr. Huff. I brought in Mr. Brenner. Mr. Brenner did have a differing opinion, as did Faith and Freedom. Dr. Woods decided to go ahead and go with his counsel. Then what we had happen is the administrative state basically, in a sense, canceled the court decision. And here we are. My point is, in bringing in someone like Mr. Brenner, who is a very small percentage of our legal costs, it was important to get that perspective. It was important for me to share with the community, which that was censored. I think moving forward, it's going to be important to ask for the itemized breakdown because it explains more of the story. And I was asked to sign Mr. Brenner's recent invoice, but I haven't with others. And as I sat and went through those, it was very apparent to me I need to be asking those questions. When you have somebody like Mr. Brenner providing outside advice, it does make a difference because we have some great firms, but when you're involved with HRD and negotiations and you're advising the board and you have the superintendent, it behooves you to keep all of that moving in an establishment direction. Mr. Brenner provides different constitutional perspective that is very important. But I will tell you, so many of these extra costs that have come about are a result of doing things differently, creating policy, and wanting the community to understand that we're fighting for the things that we were elected to do. There was an investment of time, but if I could give you a snapshot of the last 2 years, and you could see the lawfare internally and externally, you would have better perspective in understanding it. So many of our firms do hundreds of thousands of dollars and do good work. I don't argue with that. But the advice is different when you're not in every piece of the pie of what's going on. And I have shared those things with Dr. Woods, and we have had conflicting, differing opinions. And it has been frustrating at times. But my goal is to be honest with this community. And my hope is when we do have a fully constituted board, we together can make it better. So I'm definitely with you on that. But what you need to know is because you're not seeing the splash of all the itemized items, you're not seeing the full picture. And so I do feel like this was helpful tonight. I do think Mr. Brenner, again, has provided advocacy, support. I have full faith and trust and understanding. He doesn't make his money with us. So with that, I don't know if the two of you have something further to add. I don't want to close it unless you do.
Yeah, I would just like to reiterate that most of what you just said was untrue. No one's hiding things. There is no conspiracy. And I am offended on behalf of the people who sit at this dais that you would say things like that, knowing it's untrue. The CDE, once again, I think I've said this numerous times, their policy and ed code trumps any board policy that we make. So bringing this up, again, to beat a dead horse and to throw people under the bus once again. The role of the board is to provide oversight. And one of the best ways to do that is to work in cooperation, not in coordination, but cooperation. It doesn't mean that we are going to rubber stamp everything that comes our way, which I certainly don't. I dig into it and get information before I make any decision. Nobody's paid me, last time I heard, to make a vote a certain way. There's been accusations of that, and I find that super offensive, and it comes from you as well as people in the public, and I am offended by that people would question my integrity. It's ridiculous, anyone who knows me, and same of these people who sit up here. There is no conspiracy. Things that come down from the state are a mandate for a public school. And these attorney fees, you can try to spin it any way you want and say, oh, if you could see what I see, you'd know the truth. The truth is, we didn't have these until you were here. Exactly. End of story.
Thank you.
So the truth of it is, I asked for...
Can I speak,
Yes,
please?
you may. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Yes.
So apparently, some people don't understand the hierarchy of laws in this country. So we take the federal government, the Congress, the Senate, they pass laws. Those laws affect the state. The state passes laws which affect communities or cities or municipalities. So in terms of education, you have the superintendent of instruction, whose name has been maligned here by people in this audience. If you don't like the people in the government, vote for other people. But once they're in power, just like you and I and Allison, we took an oath to obey the laws of the state of California and the U.S. Constitution. We may not like a law, but we have to obey it. So people coming up here and advocating that we break the law is something that we cannot do. So you have the superintendent of instruction, you have Dr. Gomez and the Riverside County Office of Education, and then you have us. And those two entities have power over us. The legislature makes the laws and the ed code, and they are administered from the Department of Education through our COE to us. So anyone who thinks that we could just do whatever we want, we don't want to obey 1955 because we don't like it, that's not how it works. And I also resent being put in that we're doing things in secret, that we coordinate. The only time I ever see Allison is when we're at a meeting. We don't coordinate anything. I get a lot of input from the people who email me and talk to me and text me, and they're pretty upset about wasting $1.25 million on legal fees. And that had nothing to do with me.
So AB 1955 is not law.
It will be
excuse me. It's not law until January, and that's if there's not a stay or injunction. Allison, just because you say everything I am reiterating is not true doesn't make it so. Here's the bottom line. When it came to the CDE discussion, I asked very specifically to see the counsel that Dr. Woods received from our firm. I was denied. When the letter had already been mailed out, then we became privy to more documentation, probably not because you requested it, but because I did. And if I had seen that prior, a closed conversation would have looked a lot differently. So when I say we weren't given all the information, and I'm assuming that is all of us, it is true. And as a result, we have gone down a road that has been lawless. What needed to happen is if we were going to nullify policy, it should have been a vote with the three of us in public. The CDE and the superintendent don't nullify policy. Even the California Department of Ed know it. They can make suggestions. They can make administrative statements. What they cannot do is take down elected officials who have voted in a public session in regards to policy. And as I studied and went through this information, that is what I found. So anybody who wonders whether or not it's optimal to have another attorney like Epstein, Becker, and Green, this is a prime example. It is why I came forward with a letter to explain things to the public. It is why effectively I felt in a retaliatory sense canceled, which then disenfranchised the people in this community. And I know you have defended it. But at this point, there is accountability in deciding to snuff out what I had to share. And in part, it's because I feel like this didn't go down correctly. And I will be transparent. And I will let the public know because it is important. These legal fees, yes, indeed. Let's see if we can reduce them. But why don't we all take some responsibility in recognizing the fact that it wasn't just about the conservative board members, it was about the lawfare, internally and externally. We can all choose to step back and analyze it, but I'm tired of everything I'm saying you're refuting as a lie. It is not. And I feel like that is an easy way to censor debate, to just say this person is not telling the truth, and further, I'm going to shut you down, which is exactly what happened.
I have been shut down for 2 years, Jen. 2 years I've been shut down. My opinion has mattered 0%. And now that we are on a little bit more equal footing, the three of us, then now tables are turned. And we don't agree with you. And because we don't agree with you, now you call it censoring. We were censored right and left for 2 years.
I have done my best to hear you out, and I have wanted to.
Well, it didn't happen. It didn't happen.
We
And
can
after
take the
every
last 2
single
years.
meeting, I would get emails saying, I can't believe how you were shut down in that meeting. And that's just the truth.
So that equals
And I
making
am
it right
telling
to
you-
walk out on the
No.
meeting and to shut everything
You
down.
know the reason I did that. Because I do, still to this day, do not believe we were following proper procedure for the meeting. You got your letter out there. You did it on the agenda, which shouldn't have been done. That was an end run around something that you should not have done. And all of your videos and your Instagram posts and your everything you did that people were sending me, you got the word out. You did it.
We went another route.
No, but nobody was trying to censor you. That meeting was done. And that's my opinion. And I was not going to, you said, if anybody doesn't want to hear me leave, I left. And there we go. So You're
So
free
you
to
can
tell
defend that.
everyone you want. You're
You are
free
free
to
to
tell
defend
anyone
that.
you want your opinion. That's perfectly fine. In this setting, some things we can say, some things we can't. In fact, right now, we probably should stop this discussion because we're not even talking about the agenda item.
Exactly.
And that's a rule of this meeting. Just like
It
people
all works
can,
into legal fees, however,
people
so that's
can
convenient.
say, I don't know what you're talking about. People can stand up here and say whatever they want within limits. There are still limits. It has to fall under our purview. You can't stand up here and threaten people. The First Amendment is not absolute, and it certainly isn't absolute in a school board meeting where we have rules and laws about what we can talk about and what we can't talk about, just like we can't freely sit here and tell people what we talked about in closed session. There's a rule about that. Even though you could say, well, it's my First Amendment right to say whatever I want to. I can repeat myself what I said in close and say it now. That's not true. There's a rule about it. No one is trying to censor you. Believe me, you're in the queen seat. You're the one telling us discussion is over or when to talk and when not to talk. You're not being censored at all. We are hearing each other out. We sit here and bite our tongues, and I think Dr. Woods might have some opinions about what you just said about him too, that maybe we should let him share. Because it's unfair. It's just unfair. And you turn the tables and try to persecute the people who are trying to help you, and I'm so tired of it. And you know what? I hope when we have a fully constituted board, it will be fully constituted and moving us forward. That's what I hope.
It's not about persecution. I have always done my best to be transparent and have conversations as they have happened. I am not rubber stamping things. I will not do things in a sense of expectation of what's been done in the past. We're in a different era. So at this point, I am going to have Mr. Brenner take the floor. He
For
is
what?
here.
We don't need any more discussion. Can we move the
Mr.
issue?
Brenner did a synopsis today briefly.
We do not need to move on. This was an information item. He's not on the agenda, and we need to move forward.
Mr. Brenner, if I call on you, as the presiding officer, you do in fact have the ability to speak. Correct?
Yes. As the presiding officer, you can recognize someone to speak.
I have recognized you.
All right, I will be very brief. The discussion is important, and you've all acknowledged that. This is an important discussion. Cost control, being good stewards of public monies in a $300 million plus annual budget. 425, I stand corrected. Legal fees are obviously an extremely small piece of that. I do appreciate the frustration on all sides. You all come at this philosophically different, but that's part of what makes this country great. It's part of what makes the process work, and we all have to respect each other, and I think, you know, candidly, you've done a pretty good job of that tonight, given some of the subject matter here, and I hope I've lived up to that ideal as well. I want to make two quick comments by way of corrections. The hierarchy of laws is very important. Principles of federalism and constitutionalism are important, and that includes the separation of powers. That means that executive branch administrative agencies don't have the power to declare what the Ed Code means. The judiciary has that power. Agencies, including the CDE, doesn't have that power, and when the CDE issues a corrective action notice on a complaint, the board has options. One option is to follow the corrective action. Another option is to seek reconsideration. Another option is to seek judicial intervention. And I don't know that all the options were brought to the board, or any of them was. Certainly it's not my understanding that the board was given the opportunity, as it should have and must have been, to authorize any action on a CDE corrective action requirement.
If I could correct you, the superintendent called us all in and asked us what we thought about
Individually.
it. So what you just said is incorrect.
Okay, if you're, I'd advise you not to disclose closed session items if that's what
It's
you're doing.
not closed session.
And
This was,
I
we
would
met
just
with
ask
the
that I not,
superintendent
I would just ask that I
individually.
not be interrupted. I would never interrupt you. It's just polite. In terms of expenditures, it's very important to see this information, but you're right.
Mr. Brenner, hold for one moment. Could I please have everyone quiet and respectful? Thank you.
What the public should want, what the voters should want, what staff should want, what the board should absolutely want, is that the board and the district who operate in a legal environment get the legal advice it needs. Those gross categories show an increase in legal expenditures for advice to the board and to the superintendent, but they also show a significant increase in advice to staff and the Human Resources Department, special education. Special education expenditures legally has been increasing every year since 2019-2020 from what we've seen. The $479,000 aggregate number was actually not, that was the lowest number we saw, but it was higher the year before, and it was higher in years since. The point is the board and the district and staff need to have adequate legal advice. That's very important. And that is not entirely something within the board, the districts, and the staff's control. It is dependent in part on what kind of legal challenges you receive, what kind of resistance you receive, and in part whether those efforts are in good faith or in bad faith. But many of the legal expenses, presumably, or if not all of them, were appropriate here. And cost control is important. I'll make one last point, and so everything that everyone has said here to me is exactly at the bottom line, exactly where you all should be. And I would certainly hope the superintendent and staff would be on the same page. Cost control is important. Being good stewards of public monies is critical and a major part of your function. When it comes to legal advice, I do feel you've got a good stable of lawyers. They're very capable. And even if we have disagreements, and in particular some disagreement over the way the CDE matter was handled, I do think you've got very qualified counsel across the board. I do think there's a difference when it matters on a particular issue, whether you have legal advice as a board member or a board from an attorney who is very dependent on staff and the superintendent for substantial legal work. Sometimes you might have more trust in getting legal advice from a lawyer who doesn't have for himself or herself hundreds of thousands of staff-directed legal work in his or her equation. I don't have that. I don't have that in my equation at all. My advice is solely and exclusively from the perspective, objectively, of the board and what's in the district's interest. That's also the perspective that every other lawyer brings to your table. I am confident in saying that. But the reality is, if they have to worry about whether the flow of work is going to continue from other quarters within the district, that can impact a lawyer's otherwise objective analysis. And I'll close with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brenner.
The facts are, I received a letter. I shared it with each of you individually, took your thoughts and perspectives. The only majority I could deal with would be a 3-0 in any case. One of you left, I think, out of the country the next morning and was gone for 10 days. There was no chance to bring the board back on a special assignment. I had a mandate from CDE, and our legal team, the legal group I consulted with, told me to send a letter. Very difficult decision for me because I was virtually alone. And I respect each one of the differences of opinions, but I needed to take action. And I took action in support of CDE, the group that I believe governs what we do here today. And if someday I'm found wrong, great, because I have an attorney that can come here today and speak as passionately about his advice to me as we've heard this evening. But again, I appreciate the conversation. You can certainly think I've done something wrong. I don't believe so, and I stand behind my decision 100%.
Do we want to head into board comments at this time? No, we want to do that board comments update. All right, negotiations update. Mr. Arce?
Sure, I'll be very brief. Start with TVA. During the month of September, we had a session with the evaluation subcommittee. So this is a group that's been meeting to continue developing a new teacher evaluation form. And we'll meet again on October 7th. So this work will continue throughout the year. And our hope is that we have a new evaluation form that we can pilot in place for the 25-26 school year. We're scheduled to meet with the joint TVA, TVUSD ad hoc budget committee next week on October 2nd, and we look forward to working with that group and discuss our annual budget cycle. We meet with CSCA tomorrow for bargaining, and that is my negotiations update. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Appreciate it. All right, on to board comments.
Me again. Yes, so just a few things I want to address really quickly. There are no litter boxes in any bathrooms in any schools. That is an urban legend, and there certainly are not any here in Temecula or in Murrieta. In addition, I apologize, Mr. Barham, if you felt like I was giggling at you. I should not have done that. I was distracted by someone in the audience, and I was in no way a response to your comments, and I do apologize for that, and I will do better in the future. There is ed code regarding notifications about suicide. It is a very, very serious topic. It is 5141.52, and we do notify parents. Parents are notified of literally probably more than they don't want to be notified of if their child has a tummy ache because they are hungry. They might get a call. So I feel very confident in our staff and our policies about notifying parents. And if anyone has a personal question or issue with that, I would really recommend you take that to your school site. If you need help navigating that, we're always here to help you. But the best way, if you have any concern about any policy, any assignment, any question at all, I would start with your child's teacher and move to your principal. People do not become teachers to get rich. They become teachers because they care about kids. So I would really encourage you to take that route because our teachers do care. I have always been very pleased with all of the teachers my children have had and that I have met over my time here on the board. So those aside, I did get to go to the TV SHAP game. It was super fun. And we actually, we pulled a little prank on Dr. Woods. So, and I was promised by Jimmy that video would be released. So if you haven't seen it, you need to see the little prank we pulled on Dr. Woods. But he was an excellent sport. So thank you for being a sport. And it was not my idea. I want to remind you it was not my idea. Anyway, it was a really fun game. And I was out of town, so I didn't have a lot of other activities the last 2 weeks from our last meeting, but I do have some upcoming events that I will be attending, and I'm very excited. I'm going to attend the DLAC meeting, as I talked about. I'm looking for a few more ways to get involved in our diverse population, so I'm gonna pop in on that. TVHS Homecoming is coming up. I have 4 site visits. I'll be at Battle of the Burgers, and I will be at girls volleyball. I'm going to girls volleyball. I can't wait. And that's it for me. Thanks.
I got a lot of things, but I'm not going to go through all of them. First thing I want to do is congratulate 4 students at Great Oak High School, Sienna Young, Jane Lee, Jaden Lee, and Nolan Ryan, National Merit Scholars. It's a great honor. It's a lot of work to be a National Merit Scholar, and I just want to congratulate them and their families. I had attended the Excellence in Equity Conference last week in Palm Springs. We saw a lot of really good, people talking about a lot of good things. One was our own Dr. Anthony Price and his wife gave a great presentation about Bloom's taxonomy and how that is part of what we should be doing in school, and along with having children understand the relationship between what they feel, and how they go about learning what they learn. It could be really simple. So, for example, some of the schools I visited, when you look at the kid's desk, there are 3 squares. There's a red square, a yellow square, and a green square. And when the children sit down, they point to the square. If they point to the red square, they didn't have a good day at home. If they point to the yellow square, it was okay. And if they point to the green square, they're okay. And that can tune in the teacher to give that child a little extra attention. And I have to say, I'm proud to be supported by our teachers and proud to be supported by the superintendent of public instruction. That's a big deal. He could have probably not known me from Adam, but in some way, somehow he found out what I do on this board, my experience as a teacher of 40 years, how I've worked in this community, how long I've been here. I'm proud of his support. And if I don't agree with something that happens in government, there are outlets to reach, but I will obey the law, I will obey Ed Code, and I will follow the mandates that come from those places. A couple other things. I feel terribly about those people who came here to talk about their immigration situation. I agree with Jen. We need to get Congressman Issa involved since it's a federal issue. I know we have resources here at the school who can kind of guide them along. I got all their information. I passed them on to the cabinet, and they will kind of guide those people along as to what they need to do to get their stuff taken care of. I wanted to correct the person who talked about what it cost to fire Dr. McClay. It was $325,000 because she was fired without cause, and she also has a lawsuit against us for other expenses, so it actually could go up. I don't know about Antifa Friends. I don't even know what that is all about. I wish people, when they came here to talk, would talk about education issues and not political issues. Same thing, we talk about woke and Antifa, and I mean, let's talk about our kids and education, and let's focus on that. Let's stop focusing on politics. The election's coming up November 5th. You can vote for whoever you like, no one's gonna stop you. Also, there was a question about how many board members have to vote on something to make it a vote. We got a few legal opinions about that. Some legal opinions said 3-0, some legal opinions said 2-1. They're just opinions. We have not gotten a final decision, a legal decision, from an authority. I'm talking about CDE or RCOE or the Secretary of State or Rob Bonta's office as what is the exact thing, whether it's 3-0 or 2-1. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Tonight, I want to give a shout out to Mr. Mendez at Bella Vista Middle School for graciously meeting with Dr. Woods, Jimmy Evans, and I to explain more about their strategic plan to improve math scores and getting to students on time. He talked about music playing, sweeping kids into their rooms, and how they're trying to have fun with it, but tell them, get into the classroom, study, do what you need to do. And I loved that. He was very honest with us. So thank you to Bella Vista. At Summit Academy, it's always wonderful to go there and talk to Keith Moore, who is just a visionary, and it was fun to see the new locker room being built. It was fun to walk the halls and see kids on the floor and drawing on tables and on the walls, and it's just evident they use every aspect of their space for good things. He also talked about the dream of a 4th phase, And when the board is fully constituted, I'm hopeful he will come and talk about that. I love so much about Summit. So those of you who are out there in French Valley, it is just, it's an awesome thing. This past Thursday, I visited, last Thursday, I visited Temecula Middle School and their first Watchdogs meeting of the year. I don't think Danny Molina is here. Is he here? I think he left, but I just want to thank him because he was really an inspirational encouragement to our dads. And I know that his wife was there, his team was there. It definitely takes a variety of people to make sure something like this gets off the ground each and every year. Thank you to Principal Mr. Morton for hosting us, also to the PE teacher, Mrs. Cardinelli. She's a rock star on that campus, and she hosted it. She's also going to be the parent coordinator and room host. And if you're listening out there, check into whether or not your school does have the Watchdogs, because it really is a neat program where they're there to shake hands, smile with our students, be those extra eyes and ears that I think make us better. So if you're a dad out there and wondering, check into the school that your student's at. We would love to have you jump on board. So a little bit was said in terms of the recent video I shared on social media that had some questionable imagery and content from an English assignment. I do stand by that decision, and I've discussed things with the family and the leadership from the school. I do want you to know that I feel beholden to families, and I want to be able to give them insight and perspective, and to make sure that they do know, as parents, you got to be watching the homework and the curriculum. You do need to be talking to the teacher. Make sure that those open lines of communication are there. Protecting kids is always one of my top priorities. It may not always be conventional. It may not always be the favored approach, but I do think outside the box, and I can guarantee you that I do that with the intention to represent truth, a courage of conviction, and to see us get better. That's the point, is what can we do to get better and make sure the offerings are as good as they can be for students at TVUSD. So in closing, there are a couple of hard things that I do want to say, and I say it in humility. We did have 4 solid legal opinions that did talk about a 3-0 being the way every single action item needs to be affirmatively passed through. And those were major firms. So I need you to know that that was explored, and that did come with some legal fees on the back end. But it was clear it is a 3-0 vote. I'd also like to say, Dr. Woods, I've appreciated you being here and what you've brought to the table. I think there have been some great things that you've strategized with, that you have envisioned for our different campuses. I appreciate the work that you've done. I've fought for you to be here. I will say that I am deeply disappointed with some of the actions that I feel you've taken outside your realm of authority. And I don't feel like I've gotten all of the honest questions answered. But here's what people need to know. This is what we do. These are the things as a board that we work through, that we offer grace to one another. We're not always going to agree, and that's okay. We're in a season right before an election campaign, and it does make it tough. There's a lot at stake. I know you want to be neutral. I have felt like there's some things going on that have been retaliatory. But what I want you to know is that I want to continue working through all of these things for the good of the community. And I want to know, no matter the differences we have, the fact that perhaps you didn't take into account additional legal perspectives that I thought should have been, that I'm going to speak to because it's the truth. But I'm also going to tell you, thank you for doing what you do. Thank you for visiting so many campuses. Thank you for day in and day out trying to connect with people and creating relationships. It's tough for somebody to come from the outside and come in and make inroads and differences, and I value that, and I understand that. Again, I want to let people know I think we're in a different era. We do need to be people of moral courage. We do. I didn't sign up for the establishment, and I don't say that all negatively, but I always think through what I'm pursuing, and not perfectly, but to the best of my ability, want to represent those families. And I hope you do too, and I think you do. I think as we move past the election, hopefully we'll have seats that clearly define things and what we stand for and what we're moving towards. And that will be in the hands of the voters. So we'll go forward with that. Thank you to all of you who are here tonight in the room listening and being a part of this. We value you, your commentary, your dissenting opinion, your different perspective. I value that. I want you to know it. So thank you for listening. I don't think 3 minutes would be enough time. As an elected individual, I think trustees do need to have a little bit more than that. So with that, God bless all of you and good night.
Thank you. Ms. Wiersma, my job is to make sure the three of you are represented equally, and I will continue to do that. I don't retaliate. Secondly, I want to recognize the co-curriculars, the extracurriculars. A lot has been said about that tonight. Ironically, it was on my list to talk about today, because when you want to know the health of a district, go to some of those co-curriculars. I was floored when I went to Great Oak and saw those kids doing what they do in the stands. I was floored when I went to TVHS and saw everybody in pink in support of cancer. I was floored when I go to Chaparral and see how beautifully dominant that football program is. As a former college football coach, I respect and admire the work that it takes to build such a program. But what thrills me even more, though, and my mom asked me, my 86-year-old mom is going to come and visit me next week, and she said, "What do you want me to see?" And I said, "Mom, I want to take you to a football game, because you'll understand more about Temecula watching those football games than I can tell you over a week." Because it shows that we have parents that are supportive, passionate, teachers, classified staff that are giving their all, giving extra. Most of them are teaching a full day, but they're staying back. They're staying extra time to give the kids even more. And our parents, I hear you. It's expensive to keep these kids involved as much as we are. Transportation is incredibly expensive. We understand that. And the commitment it takes to get the kids to these events every single day is phenomenal. But keep it up, because that's the health of our district. That says a lot about Temecula, and I'm proud to be your superintendent.
Thank you, Dr. Woods. So the announcement of the next meeting, the next regular open session business meeting of the Governing Board of Education is scheduled for October 29th, 2024. With that, the meeting is adjourned on September 24th, 2024 at, call it, Mr. Schwartz? 8:52. Thank you. At 8:52 p.m. Thank you and good night.